YouTube, it's Chris. Welcome back to the channel. Today, I officially announce and release my updated Ultimate Windows Optimization Guide. I did a video about it a year ago, and I'm going to leave that up because today we're going to cover over the Ultimate and everything, but only more on a surface level. There might be some details in here. It might be useful for you guys to go back to. We have now renamed it to Ultimate, and what can Ultimate do for you guys? So you're probably a little confused because you're like, Chris, you just brought out WinSux. What's the difference between WinSux and Ultimate? Well, WinSux is just like a one-click solution only for the Windows stuff. Ultimate does a whole lot more. Ultimate will show you how to update your BIOS, factory reset Windows, reinstall Windows, apply the basic BIOS optimizations to get good performance, how to stress test and solve stability issues, make sure everything's okay, how to set up Windows nicely with full control, debloat options, and complete revert options. There's a bunch of nice installers there, silent installs, and just basically anything that you can think of, I have crammed into the Ultimate to give you full choice and control on how you want to set up Windows with revert options to make your life easier. So just to let you guys know, if any of my WinSux users are considering using Ultimate, please do. There's lots of good stuff in there, like revert options for things that you don't like that were applied in WinSux. Also options for installers, a whole bunch of other goodies in there. Let's get started with it. We'll go to the Ultimate guide. Guys, you're going to go to my GitHub to do this. I'm on a complete fresh install of Windows, factory home, and I've completely reset my BIOS settings so we can walk through everything together with you guys. Now here is the main page of Ultimate. Let's go over some things. It's a Windows guide for power users, multiple scripts with revert options, and a lot of scripts need a reboot of the scripts to apply. You guys really need to pay attention to this one because if you've applied some scripts, you really need to reboot for a lot of them to apply. You can apply a whole bunch at once and then restart if you want to be lazy like me, but just letting you know, if you just do one and expect everything to change straight away, it won't. Sometimes you need a reboot. I have gone out of my way, just like with WinSux, to make sure there is full support and full patch for Windows 10, Home and Pro, LTSC, IoT, and Server. You will require online access to use a lot of these scripts, how the way I've set things up. And because a lot of people didn't watch my full video last time, I'm going to give you guys a big warning. If you are playing around with things in the advanced pack, it is for advanced users. Be cautious, okay? This folder is for advanced users that know what they're doing. There are two ways to get the Ultimate pack. One of them is to go code and download zip. That's the first way we can do it. It may take a little while for Defender to scan the files. I'd recommend opening your download, right-clicking here, going extract all, press extract, then drag this folder straight to the desktop, simply so it sorts everything in alphabetical order for you. If you're going to apply the pack this way, open it up. You guys will need to run allow scripts first. Otherwise, you won't be able to run any of these scripts. So to do it this way, double click on allow scripts. You'll get this, click run. You get this, click run, and then press yes for administrator prompt. What this script is going to do is unblock all the files in here and also allow you to run scripts on your machine. So you would press 1 on the keyboard and then enter. Just say enabled PowerShell scripts and unblock files. So then we can get started with it. So that's one way to do that. I've made a much easier way to do it rather than doing it that way. Instead of having to download it and then run allow scripts, I made an IWR that will automatically download the files and unblock the files and allow you to run scripts all at once. So to do it that way, you will probably need to go in your search bar and search scripts just so it lets you apply PowerShell scripts in the first place so you can run the IWR. When you're here, turn this on. Go here, press this to copy, search PowerShell in your address bar, right click and make sure you run PowerShell as administrator. Press yes for the UAC prompt. You should see a PowerShell window and it should say administrator PowerShell window. If it doesn't say administrator, this won't work. Control V or right click to paste the codes there and press enter. So this is going to allow scripts, unblock the files, download the folders and extract the files for you. It will save you a lot of time. Press continue. What it's done here is just downloaded the pack simply to your desktop and already extracted it. It saves a lot of time. You do not need to run allow scripts with this one. It saves a bit of time there. Let's start with check folder. Let's open check folder. Check folder. Now, there are two ways you can run these PowerShell scripts. Right click and run with PowerShell. Now that's kind of super annoying. I would rather double click. So to allow the double click option, which I have allowed with my CMD script or the IWR script, right click the file, go show more options, go open with, click PowerShell and then click always. Now it will give us the option to double click. We will see the icons change here. Let's start with space check. When it comes to SSDs or NVMEs, you always want to keep at least 10% free. Now Windows will tell you this. If you fill up your NVMe or SSD drive or any drive up until the red, that's generally a sign that you need to free some space. If you don't keep at least 10% free on SSDs, you will lose read and write speeds and you can lose performance. Make sure you always keep about 10% free on everything if possible. Next one is RAM check. We want to open this and then press yes for the admin. It'll download CPUZ for us and it will give us some information. We want to make sure that in BIOS, our XMP, DOCP or Expo profile is enabled. What is this? If you go to SBD tab, you will see either XMP or Expo here. That is the official RAM profile and that is actually not enabled by default. default. Your RAM is in a sleep state by default. So I would recommend going to memory here and check what it's at. You're going to actually need to double this number here to see what the number is at. If you're not sure about doubling the number, you could always check in Task Manager. We are only at 3600 mega transfers. So we do not have, at least on my RAM kit, the Expo profile enabled. This is one of the most important things you want to get enabled in BIOS. Very, very important. We're going to have to make sure we go in BIOS and we'll do that. You also want to make sure that the RAM is in the correct slots. So to check that, I want you to go to SPD. If you only have 2 sticks, you want them in slot 2 and slot 4. If you have 1 stick, that can completely depend on the board. And if you have 4 sticks like I do, that actually doesn't matter. I'm going to get up my motherboard manual just to show you guys. This can be fairly important because some of you might have issues running your XMP or Expo profile, and that could be because your RAM are in the wrong slots. You also want to make sure there is no mismatch in RAM module. Mismatching RAM is a big no-no, especially when you start to enable XMP or Expo profiles, because if mismatched, you're potentially overclocking one that won't be able to handle it. So just quickly go through here. We check the part number right here. Part number's the same, part numbers are the same, part numbers are the same, part numbers are the same. That's fine. And you want at least 2 RAM sticks, which is dual channel, for decent performance on most modern PCs. Running single channel, just 1 stick, is not ideal. I'm going to go to my BIOS webpage just to show you guys how important it is to have the sticks in the correct place. Now, when it comes to a single stick of RAM, it can depend on the board. So look up the manual. At least on my board, it's saying it should be in B2 if I was running a single stick of RAM. So what they mean by A1, A2, B1, B2 would be A1, A2, B1, B2, right? That's the layout of it. Now, if you run 2 sticks, you would want to make sure you're running in A2 and B2, which is slot 2 and slot 4. This is really important because if you actually don't put it in the right slots, a lot of the time you'll have stability issues with your XMP or Expo profile, or you won't be able to boot at all. And 4DIMMs is just pretty obvious. So always check your motherboard manual to make sure everything is all good. Let's close these and we'll move on to the next one. GPU check. We want to check the PC. You can press no here. We want to check the PCIe bus interface is at maximum. What do I mean by that? So GPU-Z will help us with that one if it wants to open up. On the left here, right here, it says we can do 16 times, 16 lanes, and 5. We need to make sure we're at 16 and 5. Now this one here can go in a sleep state, which is pretty normal. So sometimes you actually need to get the card loaded up. This is a little bit annoying. It wants me to install either a C++ package or DirectX to get the card loaded up. Most of you probably won't have that issue, but I've obviously just gone in and installed those. Start the render test. See how we can do 16 and 5, and we are at 16 and 5, and that is good. Just to let you guys know, some of you might only have a PCI Express 4 card or a PCI Express 3 card. This is what you can do, and this is what you're at. Now, if you are, it says you can do 16 and 5 as an example, and you're only at 8 and 5. That is a problem. You'll lose a little bit of performance. You might want to check something on your motherboard manual. The 2 things I usually see people get wrong with that, with not being able to utilize the full 16 lanes, is you either don't have your graphics card in the top slot. You want to make sure you've always got your graphics card in the top slot so you can usually use all the lanes. Some boards will let you use other slots, but usually top slot's the safest bet. And most boards, if you go to tech specs, you don't necessarily have to go to the manual. It'll tell you something here. So as example, if I use the M22 or the M23 slot, my graphics card will only be in 8 times mode. So those are just some things for you guys to look at to make sure you're in at 16 times. It's also quite possible if you haven't updated your BIOS, there might be a bug. If it says you can do 5 and you're not getting 5, that could be a thing as well. Or you could have something wrong with the board. Usually it's just the graphics card isn't in the right slot and you've got one of those funky boards that doesn't like you using a certain slot on the board for an NVMe drive. So check out your manual for that. Now, running multiple graphics cards is not recommended. SLI is kind of a thing of the past and games aren't optimized for that anymore. Well, they never kind of really were, to be honest with you. So just stick with a single really good card. If you're trying to run SLI or anything like that, just don't even bother. Just run a single card. Now let's do BIOS updates. So this will actually grab your board info and take you directly to Google. And you can actually, the first thing that should come up is your actual board. So I'm going to update my BIOS with you guys. I'm going to go to support. Usually most web pages are the same between boards. They have the same sort of like layout. We want to go to support. We want to go to BIOS. Now we'll grab the latest version, but we want to make sure it's not a beta. Please do not install a beta. Don't be their testing dummy. Install anything other than a beta. So I see there is 4.1.0 at the moment. So we'll go ahead and we will download that. I'll click global. Every motherboard manual is going to look a little different, and then we'll open that up. We'll actually need to extract this. So we'll right click and go extract all and extract. Okay. And then this file we're actually going to have to put on a USB stick. Now some boards will let you read the BIOS file off a drive. So you could actually like drag it to like the C drive or the D drive. That doesn't always work. So if you want to make sure it's definitely going to work, I would recommend an 8 gig or a 16 gig USB stick. So I'm just going to simply drag it here to the USB stick, and then we can do the BIOS update. The BIOS on our USB stick. Next one is BIOS settings. So open this up. We'll press yes. Okay, this is going to cover most of you for the basic BIOS settings to get good performance out of the box. If you have an Intel CPU, make sure you enable the RAM profile. We've already talked about that. Disable C states on Intel if you are on a K chip, all right, to stop the CPU from downclocking. This is fairly important. If you don't have a K chip, please don't disable C states. You will be locked on non-turbo boost. This only applies to K chips. That's why it says K chips only. You want to make sure enable resizable bar on or rebar or cam. Some boards call it something different. And disable iGPU if possible. Some Intel boards actually won't let you disable iGPU, which is a little bit annoying, but we can manage that because I have a custom script and block Windows from downloading drivers, so it won't randomly download the Intel driver on you for the iGPU. I've got you covered there, don't worry guys. Now with an AMD CPU, you want to enable the RAM profile, XMP, DSP, Expo, whatever it's called on your board. We want to enable Precision Boost Overdrive, PBO. PBO is sort of like an auto overclock feature on the board, which like removes some power limits. It's a nice setting. Enable that. We want to make sure, same thing again, enable resizable bar, rebar, or cam. Another one I found on AMD CPUs, you want to disable IOMMU. Go and find that option. It is a bit of a CPU hog on some boards. Some boards will be enabled by default, even though it says auto. Now, if you play Faceit, unfortunately, you're going to need that on. Okay, so if you play Faceit, don't touch this one. You actually might need to force it on if you play Faceit, believe it or not. But if you're not playing Faceit, Counter-Strike 2, please disable it. And then most AMD boards actually let you disable the iGPU, which is nice. Ideally, set the pump and max the pump speed and set fans to performance in BIOS if you can. And a lot of boards have a auto install driver installer software feature, which installs a whole bunch of bloat on your machine. So on Asus boards, it's called Asus Armory Crate. I believe they have renamed that and it's called something different. It's in the tool option on your board. On MSI boards, it's called MSI driver utility. Make sure you turn that off. Gigabyte, they call it Gigabyte update utility. And ASRock, they call it ASRock motherboard utility. If you guys don't disable this in BIOS, you will keep having the software coming back trying to reinstall. And a lot of this software will install rubbish. As an example, Asus Armory Crate, absolute hog on your performance. It will install a whole bunch of rubbish in Task Manager and constantly log your GPU and CPU, and it will just completely bloat up everything and slow things down. So we have to make sure those are off. So to go to BIOS, I've made things quite easy for you guys. If you press enter here, it'll take you directly to BIOS to save some time. So we'll go into BIOS and we'll look at enabling these. I'm in BIOS. Now every board is going to look a little different, unfortunately. Sometimes you'll have an easy mode and an advanced mode, so look for that. Sometimes it's easier to navigate in the advanced mode, right? I usually prefer to work with the advanced mode. For me to update my BIOS, I actually have to go to tool and then instant flash. Every board's going to be a little bit different. So I'm going to go to instant flash and then press yes to continue. And then it's already picked up my USB stick and the BIOS update. So I'm going to press update here and then press yes. Make sure you do not unplug the power while this is happening. Otherwise you can completely corrupt it. And if you don't have a USB flash pack to flash your BIOS with a USB stick, you're completely screwed. Most modern boards have a USB flashback nowadays, but if your board does not have that, make sure that you're not going to do a BIOS update when there's going to be a power outage or you're going to go and unplug the power. That would be a nightmare. It's generally really important that you guys look at updating a BIOS, especially if your board has been on first release. First release BIOSes, especially on AMD, are incredibly buggy and can cause stability issues. So ideally, my recommendation is when you get the system up and running, update to the latest non-beta version and then just do your settings and call it a day. Don't worry about updating again in the future unless you're having stability issues or you need to upgrade to a CPU and you need that BIOS update for that CPU support. If it's working fine, just leave it. Generally, first release BIOSes are buggy, so do look at updating. As you can see here, we have the auto driver installer trying to get us here to install its bloatware. We obviously don't want that. So if you ended up going straight back to Windows after doing the BIOS update, what you can simply do is you can either go back to here and we can go back to the BIOS settings, or you can restart the PC and on your keyboard spam the DEL key, the delete key, or the F2 key. There's two ways you can go. Don't do that. So I'm just going to do it with a shortcut here and press enter. Sometimes it might bug out. That's just how Windows is with a command to take you to BIOS. So I'm going to do it again and there we go. Now we're back in BIOS and we're fully updated. If you're an Intel CPU, enable the RAM profile, disable C states, K chips only, enable resize bar, disable iGPU. On the AMD CPU, which I'm on an AMD CPU here, you need to enable the RAM profile. So we'll go and do that. My board layout is a little weird. Usually you can see it here in the main page here, but because my board's a little weird, I actually have to go into DRAM profile settings and enable the Expo profile. Next for me on my AMD board, I want to enable Precision Boost Overdrive. If you can't find some of these settings, some boards actually have a search function, so you could search in here. For me, on my board, I know it's in advanced AMD overclocking, except Precision Boost Overdrive. I'm just going to set it to enable. Now for my board, resizable bar, it's actually in advanced PCI configuration. I have to go in here and make sure it's enabled. Most modern boards will turn this on by default, which is great, but I have seen some boards not turn this on. If you don't see the option, sometimes you actually might need to enable a above 4G decoding first to get that option and just make sure it's on. I am not playing Faceit, so I'll be disabling IOMMU. Usually on AMD boards, it's an AMD CBS, NBIO. I'm going to disable this. If you're not playing Faceit, I really highly recommend disabling this because some boards auto is actually enabled and you're going to lose CPU performance. Once again, make sure this is enabled if you are planning on playing Counter-Strike Faceit. Now, every board's a little different. For me to disable my iGPU, unfortunately, I have to kind of go here. It's a little weird. This is disabled. iGPU configuration, iGPU disabled. That's how I have to disable it on my board. Next one is fans. So to get to the fans here, some of you guys might have certain AIOs or fans that are controlled through a hub that you need software for. So obviously that wouldn't work in BIOS. But for me, I have all BIOS controlled fans and that's the way that I like it. I don't want any software logging my stuff and getting me to lose any frames. So I'm going to simply put it in, I don't like performance mode. It's a little loud. I'll just put everything here in standard mode here. Put my CPU in standard mode, everything else in standard mode. It's just a quick profile. You can dial in your own curve if you like. For now, most of you either look at standard mode or performance mode. There'll be something like that. Get the fan spinning up a little bit more. Now the next one on my board, it is called Auto Driver Installer. That's the rubbish that's trying to install the ASRock software bloatware stuff. For a lot of you, it might be called Asus Armoury Crate, Gigabyte Update Utility, MSI Driver Utility, Asus Armoury Crate, blah, blah, blah. Please find it and turn it off. Otherwise, it's going to keep prompting you and trying to install that bloat. Now, an extra thing a lot of you guys may need to do for modern anti-cheat games nowadays, you'll have to have secure boot on. So secure boot is in a different area depending on the board. Some of you, it might be under boot. For me, it's under security. Go to secure boot. Now, most modern boards will have this on by default, so you guys won't have a problem. A lot of the board manufacturers have got smart enough to go, okay, most modern games require TPM and secure boot. We'll enable it by default with the later update BIOS. For my board, for some reason, it's not. So I'm going to have to go and set this to enabled and set this to standard. Okay. And then I'm going to press yes. And I don't want to restart yet. So I'm going to press no. Because if I ever restarted, then I would have lost my BIOS settings that we've just tried to apply. So if you're on an MSI board, you may, and you're playing Faceit, you may need to set this to strict mode, or it's something called that. If you're having a hard time with Faceit, or maybe some games that are saying secure boot isn't on. And I've even seen bugs with boards and games that say secure boot's not on when it is. So if that happens, come back in here, disable it, restart, come back in here again, and then re-enable it again. That fixes it sometimes for people. Now, the next one you probably want to get enabled for a lot of modern anti-cheat games is trusted computing. For me, it is in here, and lucky for me, it is enabled by default. It is TPM 2.0. That's the only one that you need. Some boards are different, so I'm sorry guys, I can't show you every board. This is all I've got right now. So those are the basic settings that I need to get done on my board. Now we're going to go to exit, and I go to save changes and exit. Actually, there's another thing you guys can do. Some boards have a profile option. You can go ahead and save a profile just in case your BIOS settings ever get reset. So here's where I could save my profile and load my profile. The profile will be stuck with a board until you update BIOS 9 times out of 10. So just to let you know, if you update BIOS, you're going to have to redial your BIOS settings in. So you can save a profile. I'm going to go to save changes and exit and then press yes. Now, if you don't get a boot here after a few minutes and it hasn't memory trained and gone through all that stuff, there could be a couple of issues here, and I will cover those issues later. But now, if you can't boot at all and you've already waited a few minutes, look at clearing the BIOS. Some of you guys may have a clear SIMOS button on the back of your board. Some of you may have to take out the BIOS battery, drain power, put the BIOS battery in, boot it back up so you can figure out what's wrong. I will cover the things that could be possibly wrong on why you might not be able to boot with those BIOS settings. Got a clean boot here, which is nice. All right, but back in. So lucky for me, I booted. I know some of you out there are going to have issues and going to be like, oh no, what has Chris done? And I can't boot. My PC's screwed now. Unfortunately, when that happens, you guys are going to have to look at doing some diagnosing. Go clear BIOS and come back to this stage, all right, and find out what's wrong. This stuff will cover you with what's possibly wrong. So we're going to open up CPU test. Going to download a simple program. I really like simple programs that'll test things fairly heavily and show you instantly if something is wrong on sort of a surface level. That's why I'm using Prime 95 here. Everyone has a different idea on how to stress test things, and there are much better options out there compared to Prime 95. But Prime 95 is really lightweight and it can show if something is wrong, blatantly wrong, fairly quickly, is why I like to use it. So what I would recommend doing is clicking just stress testing, just keep it with a blend and then press OK. Now it's going to start. Your CPU usage will, memory usage will spike to 100 here. That is completely normal. All right. I recommend clicking window and merge all workers so we can keep an eye on here while it does the stress test and make sure it doesn't throw any errors, because if we get any errors here, we've either got something wrong with the CPU config or the RAM config, right? And I cover all of that here. And this is going to cover for you guys who tried to do those BIOS settings and couldn't boot. Here's what's going on. So run a basic basic CPU stress test to check for errors. Check temps, WHEA errors in hardware info during this test. In Prime 95, click window and select merge all workers. We've just covered that. So now would be a really good idea to open up hardware info. I've got you covered for that. So your PC may be a little bit non-responsive because we're running the CPU stress test and the fans might be going crazy. That's fairly normal. Let's go open up hardware info. I'll show you guys some things to look out for. Press yeah, it'll download hardware info and open it up for us. Okay, I recommend just using sensors only mode because it's just going to make life a little bit easier. It's just an easier way to just check everything. The normal mode is a little bit too much information. We'll go sensors only mode. I don't need to check for updates. Close. I'll bring this window over here and I will drag this down. So what we want to check for, make sure the CPU is boosting okay. We want to make sure that the RAM profile is on. So you're going to have to kind of like double this number to see the actual RAM profile is. So you could check for a task manager. So we're in 6,000 mega transfers. So the RAM profile is loaded and that I am running the timings of the RAM profile. So we're all good there. Keeping an eye on temps. This stress test will get the CPU running fairly hot. So please don't freak out there. Okay. Now I did say check for WHEA errors. You can check them in Windows, but hardware info logs them in real time. So while doing a stress test here, we can just check them down here. Ideally running Prime, check for errors in this window, check for errors in this window. I can't tell you how long to run it because some people would recommend running this for 24 hours. But I would dare say if you could run this for half an hour or so and you've got no errors, you're probably fine, at least on a surface level. So let's go back to the other things. So say you guys couldn't boot with those BIOS settings. Well, first of all, before I cover that, it's really important that you get your system set up right. If you have CPU or RAM errors, they shouldn't be ignored as they can lead to corrupted Windows, corrupted files, stutters and hitches, poor performance, input lag, shutdowns, and blue screens, right? And that's not what you want. You'll see a lot of like heavy overclockers go, yeah, it's fairly stable and I'm fine. I would rather have an underclocked stable system than an overclocked unstable system because of all the issues that you can get. Now, this is going to kind of cover if you guys are getting errors or if you weren't even able to boot at all. Okay, so first of all, is BIOS out of date update? That can sometimes be a thing. All the BIOS versions are buggy. Is BIOS bugged out? Sometimes I've seen some boards really buggy. If you clear SimOS, everything kind of comes right and you reapply the settings again. Do you have incompatible RAM with your board? Check the QVL. The QVL isn't the be and all. If you go to the motherboard manual or the motherboard manufacturing webpage, there's something called QVL and it will show you RAM kits that they have tested with that specific board and they are guaranteed to work. And if they don't work, that means there is something wrong with some of the hardware. But QVL is a good thing to check ideally, but QVL isn't the be all and end all. Mismatch RAM, we've talked about that. You don't want to run mismatch RAM. Other RAM in the wrong slots, check the manual. We've already covered that. Do you have an unlucky CPU memory controller? I mean, that can sometimes be a thing. Mainly not so much say on AMD with a 6,000 megahertz kit, but say if you have an Intel CPU and you've got a really fast kit like an 8,000 megahertz kit, it's fairly common that not a lot of the 13th and 14th gen CPUs can run 8,000 megahertz and you might have to downclock it all the way to 7,200 megahertz. So that's a thing if you've got a really high end kit. There's something called unlucky CPU memory controller. Overclock. Did you have an overclock on? If so, turn it off, dial it down. That could be causing errors. Everything's running smoothly here. We're not getting any errors. Is your CPU core over tightened? I've personally experienced this many years ago on one of my Intel systems. If I over tightened the cooler too much, I had issues with running the RAM profile. It just wasn't good contact between the CPU and the CPU pins on the board. Is your CPU overheating? I said, there could be a very thing here. Maybe something wrong with the cooler. Maybe something wrong with your paste job. The cooler isn't in properly. It could be getting so hot to the point where it's going to shut off to protect itself. Is your RAM overheating? That's a thing too, believe it or not. Now, usually on DDR4 B die, you don't want to be over 45 degrees, but on typically most kits, including DDR5, if you can stay under 55 degrees. So some sticks actually have a sensor log on them. Some don't, unfortunately, right? So that's just general rule of thumb. It's not typically one size fits all, but if you can stay under 55 degrees on most kits, you should be fine. And then do you have a faulty RAM stick? So this is going to be a really common one. This is one of the most common ones, guys. If you're like, Chris, I've done your BIOS settings and I can't boot, I couldn't boot it all. It could quite possibly be that you have a faulty RAM stick. It's one of the most common things that I've seen. Brand new kit straight from the shop, faulty out of the box. It's a very common thing. Do you possibly have a faulty motherboard? That could be a thing too. You've done everything, you've updated BIOS to a faulty board. Do you have a faulty CPU? That's another thing too. And do you have a bent pin in the board? That could cause issues where everything sort of like works fine until you enable the RAM profile or until you do some basic BIOS optimizations and then it can't boot at all or you throw errors. These are all typical common things that can go wrong. Most PC shops aren't going to necessarily diagnose it like this. They're just going to throw in different hardware until the problem's solved. So just to let you guys know, hopefully that can kind of get you out of trouble a little bit with at least that Now, Prime 95 will do CPU and sort of a RAM test, a little bit of both, okay? And it's just nice for a surface level stress test that'll show you immediately if something is wrong. Now, we'll close Prime 95. Sometimes it will still run in the background, so just go check that and press exit. It was still running actually. Go back to our check folder. All right, the next thing I want you guys to do, this is a RAM stress test specifically just for RAM. Now, this is using some special config from the overclocking forums. It's called TM5, TM5. If you get this message, it's just sort of how this program works. Sometimes you need to close it a bunch of times like that. It is running. It should say absolute here. It will typically, the way I've set it up, it'll do 3 cycles of absolute and stop. Generally speaking, on most modern CPUs, that'll take 2 hours absolute max. I believe on my CPU, it's only about an hour from memory. I haven't done this in a while, but this is kind of one of the heaviest lightweight view stress tests that I've found that will immediately pick up issues if something is wrong. And that's why I'm using it. Like I said, there are lots of other good tools out there for doing this type of thing. I like tools that will just quickly show you if there are going to be issues. So typically, if you could get through the full 3 cycles, your RAM config is like solid. And just to let you know, it's quite possible that you can get errors in Prime 95, in the CPU test, like errors in there that are actually caused by RAM. And it's quite possibly that you can get errors in here that are actually caused by CPU as well and throw errors. So they're kind of connected, but kind of not. So if you could generally pass that, especially if you're trying to diagnose, if you guys just run this for like 10 minutes of Prime, 10 minutes of TM5 and everything looks fine, don't worry about it. Just move on. But this is more for the guys that are kind of having stability issues and trying to diagnose stuff. Okay, so let's close that and we'll do GPU test. And I might have missed the RAM test thing, so I'll just quickly read over that. That's pretty similar to the CPU one. So yeah, that was basically the same information as Prime 95. So a bit of info there for you guys. Let's say GPU test. So we're going to be using Firmark because Firmark is a really lightweight GPU stress test that is fairly heavy. At this stage where you've got Firmark open, it would probably be a good idea to just use GPU check as well, because that has a really nice tab for sensors that is a little bit cleaner than hardware info. So I'm going to close hardware info here, right? I'll close that. I'll just use sensors and then I'll open this up just so I can sort of see everything. It's much cleaner. So you don't necessarily have to run the full resolution. So I mean, if you're on 1440p, just run a 1080p test. I'm on 4K at the moment, so I'm just going to run a 1440p test. And I'll click on run test. All right, so it's sort of running there. And we can keep an eye on temps and board power draw and all of that stuff. Now, typically this is very, very heavy. So just a heads up. So what we want to check for is temps. Make sure temps are okay. Make sure the frame rate's sort of looking good. Make sure we're getting sort of no artifacts at all, no freezing, no driver crashes, no shutdowns, and no blue screens. These are all signs that something is wrong and you probably need to look at diagnosing further. All right. So typically run this for a little bit. If everything looks fine, just move on. And don't necessarily use this as a graphics stress test for overclocking your GPU, because this will heavily downclock the core clock compared to how a lot of games work, because it's very, very heavy. All right. But it's just some basic tools to sort of get you guys out of trouble for stress testing. Let's go to the next folder. I'm going to look at refreshing. So there's a couple of options here. I'm always going to recommend you guys to do a complete fresh Windows install, obviously, but we have options. Factory reset. Factory reset. Now, I apologize, guys. I've had to put links in PowerShell scripts just because of the way virus total has been lately with links. So everything is in a PowerShell script nowadays, simply so it doesn't get flagged by Windows Defender or virus total. This will take you to system recovery. We can completely reset the PC. They'll do a remove everything and keep my files. I would recommend just backing up the files that you need on a separate drive or a external storage or USB stick, and just do the whole remove everything option. Okay, if you want to see a little bit more in depth, you can check out my older Ultimate video. I've kind of covered that a little bit more in depth. All right. And another option is if you're on a Microsoft account and you want to get off the Microsoft account, to do that, what you can do is you can go to here, account local, add another account, right, and just go sign in without a Microsoft account, and then just go local account, and we'll just call this PC, just as an example. You don't have to set a password if you want a quick login like me, and then you can press finish. And then what you can actually do right now, you have to make sure it's an administrator account. So go to properties, where is it? You can actually just double click it. Before you sign out and sign into this account, go make sure it's an administrator account. Okay, that's different to UAC. So just make sure that's an administrator account, and then you can press OK, sign out, sign into this account, and then you could come back in here and you could delete this. So actually, I'll show you guys right now doing that. Let's just press OK. I'm going to sign out. Now, so letting you guys know that if you have applied a bunch of optimizations and you do this, we'll kind of reset everything back to default some things, right? It will sign into PC and it will kind of set us up. So this is a way, an option for you guys if you don't want to do a fresh install, but you want to get off a Microsoft account. This is a way to get on a local account. Now, there is another way to do it in the immersive control panel I've seen recently, and I don't recommend doing it that way because it will mess up your directories. Because because you'll have everything as OneDrive documents, and that's a complete mess. As an example, so I'll go to users here, PC. Okay, it'll kind of everything will still be in OneDrive if you do it that way. The way I just showed you is the best way to do it. But obviously, you would want to remove the old account. Now, obviously, make sure that there's no data on the old account that that you need before you do this. But we'll go open with, choose another shell so we can double click. Here we are here. So now that I definitely don't need anything on that account, and we're going to switch to a local account. Let's pretend that's a Microsoft account. I'll just go remove and yes and okay. Now sometimes Windows won't completely remove it, so you could go to C drive users, and then this is the Microsoft account. I'll delete that and continue. One way to completely get rid of it and simply empty the recycle bin. And now you're going to be on a local account without weird directories that are going through OneDrive. All right, where were we? So we were up to doing a fresh install, I believe. So refresh, reinstall. Okay, to do a fresh install, this will simply download and open the media creation tool for either 10 or 11. A lot of you guys like to use Rufus, and I get it. Rufus is all right. My method's sort of easier and it just works. And I don't want to overcomplicate things in the Ultimate Guide, right? And the thing is, I'm going to be including an auto unattended and a special updates driver block as well, which we'll cover very shortly. So I would honestly just recommend plugging in your USB stick and just using the media creation tool. So we're going to reinstall Windows 11. Like I said, I've done full support for 10 in this guide and everything will work flawlessly, and it's the same process. So just for pure simplicity's sake of this video, we're just going to be covering 11 today. So we'll press 2 and then enter. We'll download the media creation tool for Windows 11. It'll take a little while to open. We'll say getting things ready. Press accept. They've made this pretty easy to just go through, so you don't necessarily have to click that. You could select whatever you want, but I'm just going to go with that. We want to do to a USB flash drive and then hit next, and then it should show a USB stick. If it's not, you need to try a different USB stick or plug it into a different slot in the board. So it has picked up my USB stick here, so I will press next, and it's going to actually go ahead, download the ISO, and then burn it to your USB stick. All right, it's done. I have a USB 3 stick. It took about 5 minutes. If you got a USB 2 stick, that could take up to like 30 minutes or an hour, just to let you guys know. So if you got a slow USB stick, this may take a while. Hit finish and it will just clean up the tool, and that's done. Now, if we open up our USB stick, these are the pure files that are needed to reinstall Windows. All right, but we're not done yet. There's a couple of things more that we need to do, and please don't miss these steps because they're actually super important. What is an auto unattend? An auto unattend is a file that has been around forever. It's an XML file that gets put here, and it tells Microsoft to bypass a whole bunch of rubbish, so you don't need to click through a bunch of things and turn Cortana off. You can force a local account. You can do lots of good things. What this auto unattended does is it'll preset the region so you don't need to do anything. It'll preset the time so you don't need to do anything. You'll have to try and change your time later. It'll set you up on a local account where you don't have to set a password. It'll bypass, if you wanted to install Windows 11 on a non-supported Windows 11 system, this will work. We're bypassing the TPM check, bypassing RAM check, bypass secure boot check, bypass CPU check, and bypass the storage check. And we're forcing a local account, and we're forcing having to enter a product key. So please, please, please use this one. It's very important. Let's open up auto unattended. So this script is created in a way where it will actually edit the file, create the file and edit the file for you. So you can set your own account name, because everyone wants their own account name. Now, this is not going to be a Microsoft account. This is going to be your own account name as a local account. So I'm going to call mine Freethy, and then I'll press enter. Please don't use any spaces at all in your name if possible. It does cause some issues with auto unattend. So we'll press enter, and then enter the USB drive letter. So our USB drive letter is F. So I will enter F. It can be lowercase or uppercase. It doesn't matter. Just F and then enter. And then it will actually open up the USB stick, and we have confirmed it created the auto unattended for us. So I'll edit that in Notepad just to show you guys what that looks like. This is sort of what an auto unattended looks like, but I've just made it really, really easy for you guys. And my name will be in here. So it's going to force my name, no password, no bypass all TPM, secure boot, all that stuff. Now this isn't necessarily for our machine, but this is going to really help someone who wants to use Windows 11 on a non-supported machine. So I wanted to cover all bases. This won't mess anything up either. If you are using TPM and secure boot, they will still work. Don't worry. All right, so we've created auto unattend. This is one of the most important things, and now we don't need to do all this rubbish to bypass the OOBE. It'll all be done for us, and it's going to force a local account. The next one that I'm really proud of, and I absolutely adore this script that I've made. If you guys are sort of more power users and want more control over your system, this gives you a lot of cool options here. So this will only work on Windows Pro, LTSC, IoT, or server only. There are registry keys that get applied apply through group policy that can let you choose whether you want driver updates or not, or even updates. Now, instead of using group policy, I'm using the keys here purely for simplicity. Also, just say you install home and then convert it to pro later, it'll already be applied. So when you're on pro or any of these, it'll work. So I hope you're not too confused at this stage. But what we can do here is it gives us full choice and control. So as soon as we reinstall Windows is going to download your Razer software if a Razer mouse is plugged in, your Logitech software as a Logitech mouse is plugged in. It's going to download all the IGP drivers, the graphics drivers, the chipset drivers, and you have no control over that. And then if you want a clean system like me, I'm going into control panel trying to get rid of everything, and then it doesn't get rid of everything. So then I'm going into all the folders, and I'm going into device manager, and I'm trying to uninstall the drivers, and I don't want any of that rubbish. I want full choice and control. I want the drivers that I want on my system. Now guys, you do not need chipset drivers nowadays. They're a complete waste of time and effort, and they're just bloat unless you are on a dual CCD AMD CPU and you're looking at parking your cores while playing games. If you have a single CCD CPU, don't worry about it. Now this is great because the way I've made the script is if we do block, it'll block it for the system that we're currently running. The next time we do updates, no drivers will ever come through or OEM bloatware or anything like that. So this is going to be great for laptop users that have all that Dell stuff. When you first install Windows, that won't happen. And then an unblock option. So this is for the live current install that you have already. So if I did this right now or this right now, it would block or unblock. So anytime we get Windows updates, no driver updates will come through, no OEM bloat, no, Razer or Logitech bloat, no, nothing. None of that stuff would come through. Well, I've made it where you could also apply it to the bootable USB as well. And that's what we want to do here, because the thing is, as soon as we install Windows is going to try to download all those drivers and rubbish and deploy it on our machine. We want to prevent that because doing the cleanup sometimes is really difficult. So if we could apply it instantly, so it's done straight away as soon as we install Windows, then we don't have to do a cleanup later, and then we choose what drivers we want on our system. It gives you full control. So for me, I'm going to be using the block bootable USB option because I want to do that on the fresh install we're doing today. And I would recommend any power user to do this because then you can choose what drivers you want deployed on your system. Don't leave it up to Microsoft. So we'll press 2 and then we'll press enter, and it will say enter USB drive letter. So obviously a USB drive letter is F. I'll press F and then enter, and then it will actually take you to the location. So what it does is it creates a OEM $$ setup scripts. So as soon as Windows is deployed, it's actually going to apply the group policy reg keys to stop Windows from updating drivers and all the rubbish. So we'll have full control. So that I've actually made that work with updates. So say you just don't ever want to do updates, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend for security wise, but say you just want to deploy Windows and then block updates straight from the bat as soon as the Windows is deployed, you could do that here as well. Or say you just wanted to update block updates currently, we could do that right now. Let me just make sure I'm on pro because I thought I was home. Okay, no, I am on pro here. So like I said, it won't work on home. So as an example, if I go to updates right now, obviously updates are always going to come through no matter what I do. If I do this, I press 4. This is on the live machine and then enter. It says blocked updates, press enter, continue to continue. Now, if I go to sometimes you need to restart for some of these reg keys, but this one you don't. See now updates are completely blocked and it says Windows update settings are managed by your organization, and they'll never, ever come through until you revert it. All right. So I'll obviously just revert that here just to show you guys. Unblock and enter. Now, from a security standpoint, this is a pretty bad idea. If you're a power user and you want full choice and control, this gives you full choice and control. And say you wanted to do it when you fresh deploy Windows, so Windows updates are blocked from the bat, from the get-go, you can do that. For most of you power users out there, I honestly just recommend leaving updates enabled and just block the driver updates. And we've just done that here with a bootable USB. So hopefully that sort of makes sense how that works. Now, we ideally want to grab an updated network driver because now we have full choice and control over what drivers get deployed on our machine, because we've disabled the BIOS driver update feature that comes with all the bloat, and we've stopped the Windows when we fresh install Windows to be doing that. So we have full choice and control. Ideally get an updated network driver because a lot of the times your Windows might not necessarily have a driver built in from factory for your specific board. So this script will take you directly to your motherboard. I'd recommend going to support, go to download or drivers. Okay. And I'm going to be looking for my LAN driver. And for me, I have a Realtek LAN card. And honestly, guys, I don't bother with updating anything other than LAN driver. I just grab LAN driver and graphics driver. That's it. That is all you need. Everything else is just bloat or just changes names in device manager, and it doesn't do anything. All right. It doesn't affect your performance. So I'll extract that and get that ready. And it looks like I have a nice little simple simple exe file. Some of you guys might not have this. It might be a folder with a bunch of files. If it's a folder with a bunch of files, drag that to your USB stick. For me, it's just a single exe file. So I'm going to be putting that to my USB stick, and I'll just make sure that's there. There it is there. I've got my LAN driver ready to go. Make sure you guys grab the LAN driver, because I don't want you to fresh install Windows and then be without internet because Windows didn't come with a default driver for your LAN card. Right? So now we'll go to BIOS and look at fresh installing Windows. Before we do though, I would recommend going to this PC and the Windows that you are going to be reinstalling. Right? It's always going to be C drive. I would recommend renaming this. So if you go show more options and properties, you can either call it delete me or just call it Windows or delete me, just so you know what it is. Because when we're in the install screen, we want to make sure that we don't delete our other data off our other drives, especially if you have important information. So I'm going to just call this Windows, just so we know that we're going to be deleting the right drive when we're going through the fresh install process. All right, let's go to BIOS. This script will save you a bit of time and take you directly there. So we'll press enter and away we go. We are in BIOS. We are going to have to go to boot. Every board will look a little different, and you want to change boot option 1 to your USB stick, right? Otherwise, we're going to keep going back to the current Windows boot manager with the current Windows installed. So select your USB stick and we'll press enter here, and then we will go to exit. We'll go to save changes and exit, and then press enter. And now it's going to boot to our USB stick so we can do a fresh Windows install. We have booted to our USB stick. Now the auto unattend is going to take care of 99% of things here. So we want to select our edition. I would either recommend Home or Pro. Now, because we have set the registry keys to block Windows drivers from installing through Windows updates and all the OEM bloatware, I'm going to really obviously recommend Pro, and I'm going to recommend Pro to most of you because you can activate Windows quite easily. I would really recommend Pro for most of you, but yeah, you go Home if you wanted to. I would be careful with some of the other builds, because some of the other builds come without Windows Media Player, and they're the core files for Windows Media Player, and you can't play certain games. So I'd obviously just recommend Home or Pro. For 99% out of you, I do just recommend installing Pro. Even if you don't have a key, you can get activated very, very easily nowadays, and I'll cover that a little bit later. So we'll just press next. I'm going to choose Pro because I definitely don't want Windows downloading OEM bloat or driver updates. I want a full control over that. I apologize, the screen might be really small for you guys. I can't change the scaling here. So I named my drive to Windows. Okay. So I have a bunch of, I purposely did it this way. I left my other drives plugged in. I've got important data here on tests. I've got important data here on storage. This might look a little confusing. What you want to look at is the disk. Okay. So what disk is Windows on? We named it to Windows. It's disk 2. So we want to wipe every partition that is on disk 2, but do not touch disk 1. Do not touch disk 0, and definitely do not touch your USB stick. Otherwise you're screwed. That would have to be remade. And if you'd already deleted your Windows one at that point, you would need another PC to make another bootable US. So our Windows is on disk 2. We're only going to be deleting the partitions of disk 2. So I'll start with disk 2 partition 4, delete partition, disk 2 partition 3 Windows, delete partition, disk 2 partition 2, delete partition, and disk 2 partition 1, delete partition. We're only touching disk 2. Now it's going to be different for you guys, just letting you know, but you've named it so you'll know what the Windows is attached to what disk. Okay. So I've fully wiped the Windows drive. It's completely wiped. There are no other partitions associated with it. So I make sure I have it highlighted, and then I'll press next. And this is how to do a complete clean, fresh install. Now, when this is finished, some boards will keep boot looping back to the USB stick. If that happens, you're going to have to restart and spam the delete or F2 button so you can change the boot option back to Windows Boot Manager. So you guys know sometimes it will keep boot looping back to doing this all the time, and I'll show you guys what that might look like. All right, let's just say where you've got one of those boards that's very stubborn and will always stick to that boot order that you've set it to. You might get what's happening to me here. It'll keep booting back to the USB stick even though we've already done the fresh install. So if that happens, it'll sort of look like this. So if that happens, just press the red X, press the red X again, and because we've already done all of this, just press yes to quit, and you'll have to get your keyboard. You'll either have to spam delete or F2 to go straight back to BIOS so we can change the boot order. We're in BIOS here, go to boot. You see how stubborn it is? It's always going to stick to the USB. I actually prefer it that way, but some boards are a little bit different. Some boards are smart enough to know you've done a fresh install and will automatically switch this for you, but some boards won't. So we're going to set number 1 for Windows Boot Manager now, and that's the new boot manager that we've just made. I'm going to go to exit, save changes, and exit. Now, if you guys remember videos from the past, I would always say unplug your Ethernet cable at this stage. Just stop Windows downloading driver updates and doing this and doing that. And because there's a bug with Windows 11 where it will break your local account. Well, it's quite safe to say with the auto unattended and with the setup complete, you guys actually don't have to worry about that anymore. You can just leave the Ethernet cable plugged in, and the driver and OEM bloat is going to be completely blocked, and it's going going to force the auto unattended is going to force a local account with the name that you chose for it. And if you guys want to set a password later, you can quite easily do that. But for now, Windows will be deployed without a password, so it will just instantly log you into the desktop. Windows may reboot a few times. That's pretty normal. Just taking a little while to install itself. But as you can see here, using the auto unattended, we've bypassed so many annoying things that Windows tries to get us to turn on. They're all turned off and we have a local account force. Windows is now deploying itself. Alright, Windows is deployed. So I didn't grab the OptiPack, so I'm just going to re-grab it, which can be quite annoying, but we can deal with Edge later. We're going to need to make sure we have scripts on. So let's make sure we have scripts on here. Make sure that setting is on. Free through GitHub. You guys drag those files to the USB stick, the ultimate pack of that could work too. It just makes sure that if you've done that, you run the allow scripts, but with this option, you don't have to run the allow scripts. Okay, so we will search PowerShell. We'll run as administrator, and then we'll paste that in here and press enter. Have you noticed something? That Windows isn't downloading driver updates and we don't have all this rubbish popping up in our face. We are on a local account with no password. It's logged us straight in without any rubbish. It's really, really nice. So we're back where we started. Where were we up to? So I believe we are up to setup. So we'll start with BitLocker. So on Windows Pro, BitLocker is starting to be forced on by default, which is quite annoying. I'd really recommend just turning BitLocker off if it's gaming machine. Here it is. Here. It never used to be forced on by default on Pro. BitLocker doesn't exist on Home, so you guys don't have to worry about it. But if you're on Pro, you really want to turn this off. This script will do it for you. So let's allow the option to double click with PowerShell because this is kind of annoying. Then we'll press always. Okay. And then we'll press yes for admin. So we've got the option of BitLocker off and BitLocker on. I'm going to change my scaling so you guys can see a lot easier. Here we go. Let's turn BitLocker off. So I'll press 1 and then press enter. This script will turn BitLocker off. That's on any drives at all. And it will say decrypting. So I'd probably recommend waiting for this to finish decrypting before you do anything else. So probably open Task Manager. All right. Go to disk usage and you'll see it kind of decrypting the drive here. Might take some time. Don't think this is going to help you from a security standpoint, guys. The only time BitLocker will actually help you is if you unplug the drive and try to put it into another system. It won't be readable and you have to wipe the data. It's not going to help you for, viruses or anything like that. So please just have it off. Unless you do have, important data that you don't want anyone else to access. That is a thing. But here's the thing. The BitLocker keys have kind of been broken now, and Microsoft literally gave them out to the FBI and CIA. So BitLocker is bypassable completely now. I wouldn't even bother having it on at all. Not something you guys have to worry about on Home, like I said. All right, next one, memory compression. Memory compression is starting to be enabled by default on a lot of machines. Now, if you've only got 4 gig of RAM, I'd probably leave it enabled. If you have a gaming machine, 16 gigs and above, we really want it off. Okay, it'll slow things down. I've got a check option here. So let's check. And guess what? I cannot believe it. Windows wants to enable memory compression by default on the later builds of Windows. It is absolutely disgusting. We want to turn it off. Let's press enter to continue, and we'll go back and open the script again. Let's turn this rubbish off. We'll turn it off and we'll press enter to continue again. Now, a lot of these scripts you need to restart. For this one, you actually don't need to restart. You kind of just have to wait for Windows to kick it in. So if we want to use the check option here, it might not show straight away for you guys as false. So memory compression is definitely off now. That's great. You might need to just wait a minute, depending on your drive and how fast your PC is, and then just come recheck it again. Just make sure this says false. All right, it'll say settings may take a while to initialize after boot. Wait a short period before check. Yeah, memory compression is, I cannot believe that Windows is doing this by default now. It's disgusting. That's why I've had to cover everything. All right, so we have convert home to Pro. So if you are on a laptop and it might have kind of bypassed what auto unattendeds tried to do, and you've selected, Pro Home, it might be a good idea to look at converting to Pro. So if you want to see what version you're on, you can usually just go to System, and then About, and then it will say sort of what Windows version that you're on. Another option to do that is press Windows key R, type WinVer. It's another way to do it. If you're on a laptop, a lot of you guys on laptops, the way that they work with the board, it might actually force Home on you. And there's quite a simple solution if you want to convert to Pro. I made this script for you. You simply double click it, all right? And then make sure you disable the internet first. So either Wi-Fi is connected or you can unplug the Ethernet cable or something like that. And then this will automatically get pasted to your clipboard. This is a generic Pro key, and without internet, it'll actually work and convert your version. So you can just press paste here because the script actually pastes it into your clipboard already. You can paste it here, make sure internet's connected, press next, and it'll actually convert Home to Pro for you. So that'll help out my fellow laptop users quite a lot. Okay, keys. I am not going to go in here, but you guys can activate Windows languages quite easily nowadays, and that'll take you there. I'm not going to cover that in this video. So yeah, and you can quite simply go to activation here to just make sure it's activated. A lot of you might have already been activated before and a key was tied to your board, so this might already be done. That's why it's already done for me here. But for some of you that might have used the Home to Pro or didn't activate Windows at all, you can check this here, which I am not going to show while I'm recording this video. Go to date, language, region, and time. One's pretty straightforward. Make sure you set your region. I am in the land of Australia. I'm going to click Australia here and then click sync now. Now, for some of you guys that are doing sort of uni work, university or school and stuff like that, you might want to come into language and region, and you might actually want to set your proper region. I'll do it for me anyway, right? Why not? Just to show you guys. So I'll set it to Australia. You can actually I'm just typing on the keyboard here and I'll come up. We change the region, change it to Australia. And you might want to actually add your language pack, because the spelling for things like Office 365 and certain apps will actually be what it's set here. So as an example, I'll set this to Australia, English Australia. So choose whatever yours is, right? Because the auto attend sort of presets it to the US. I don't need any of this rubbish. I just want the language pack. So I'll hit install. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to bring this up by default. So I'll click, usually I think I have to wait for it to, I can move this down. Okay. I'm going to have to wait for it to download first. There we go. It's done. I'll go move up, and then I'm not going to need 2 language packs. If you don't get rid of the other language pack, you'll always have this notification in the taskbar tray. So make sure the language that you want is set up the top as default, and then I can simply go here and just remove this one. And now it's going to get rid of that little taskbar tray icon. It is going to be pretty slow adding these. Sometimes they're a little buggy, so don't worry too much. I'm just going to close it out. We're ready to go. All right. So startup apps. So a lot of these scripts are sort of already kind of nuke these and take care of these, but just for, just for the sake of it, come in here, you can check startup apps. We'll turn these off. That will not turn Defender off, guys, just to let you guys know. That's just the taskbar notification tray. Turning that off is not going to turn Windows Defender off, so don't freak out over that. Here's another option for startup apps. Sometimes you might see some legacy apps in here. You can simply set it to enabled or disabled. You might see a couple of extra things in here that weren't in the other one. Background apps. So let's go to background apps. This is more of a Windows 10 thing that stops the UWP apps from running in the background. I like to apply it anyway. So when we press 1 and enter, we won't see anything pop up here. But if you're on Windows 10, you will see the background apps page open. Edge settings, I really recommend running this. This is going to remove the Edge update schedule tasks, the Edge services. It's going to pre-install an ad blocker on Edge for you. It's going to turn off hardware acceleration. It's going to turn on memory saving for you. So if you are an Edge user, at least Edge is not going to be so arse when you're playing games and hogging up much of the system. And then here it is here. So I can pin that there. I want to change my levels, whatever. I'll turn it off and on, the ad blocker. And it's already pre-applied these settings, which is our acceleration, run in the background. The services are completely nuked that update Edge all the time. We're going to be nuking Edge, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And this is store settings. So you've got store settings, optimize and default. So, most of these things have a revert option. Now, if you wanted to revert, so we'll go optimize. Now it's going to open it, because you have to actually open the store open to disable personalized experience. So just wait for the script to do its thing. Script just takes it, and that's it. All of these are off. Now, if you do use the store, later on, it might be a good idea to come in and go to downloads and just download everything. Because doing this will actually update the store. So if you're having a bug with trying to get an app downloaded and installed, it might be because the store actually isn't updated. So if you go download, check for updates here, it will update the store as well. I don't recommend doing this right now, especially if you're going to run the debloater script, because it's just going to update apps that we're going to nuke anyway. So we'll just leave that for now. Let's go to updates and pause. This is going to give you a little bit more control. It's just going to pause updates for a year. If you want to reset that straight away, you just press resume updates. But I just thought that was a cool script. So what we're going to do right now is we're actually going to fully update Windows, and I'm going to show you guys in real time how auto unattended work. Look, we're in a local account with no password, and we're going to see right now that updates aren't going to push any OEM bloatware and are not going to install drivers for us at all. So we're going to have full control. I'll quickly go to device manager here. There is just no bloat installed. So if I want a driver, I install it, I have full control. So if I want my Bluetooth to work, I'm going to have to grab a Bluetooth driver. If I want my Wi-Fi to work, I'm going to go grab a Wi-Fi driver, etc., etc. So this gives you full choice and control, and you don't have to worry about Windows updates trying to bring up a whole bunch of chipset rubbish, OEM bloat, all sorts of things. It is just an absolute lifesaver, that little driver, block driver update script. So I'm actually going to grab this update as well. So I click download and install. We'll do all of them. All right, we're pending a restart, so we'll hit restart now. All right, we have Windows fully updated. I'm going to go into Ultimate, go into Setup, and I'm going to pause updates for a year because I want full control and I can make my own decision when I want updates to come through, not Microsoft. A little bit more control. From a security standpoint, not a good idea. If you want to revert that, just press resume updates here. If you want to revert that. Let's get to installers. I have some juicy stuff here for you guys. Installers. I'll cover what some of these do real quick. Now, most of them are just a silent installer, just to save time. They're grabbing, all of these are coming from the legitimate websites now, but some of them do a couple of little extra things. Discord will pre-disable hardware acceleration. 7-zip will pre-do the 7-zip settings for the right-click context menu, which is quite nice. Brave will pre-nuke the services and update tasks. Pre-install an ad blocker. Pre-disable acceleration. Pre-disable, pre-enable memory saving, and pre-disable run on startup. Firefox will do the same as I just mentioned for Brave. Same with Chrome. Notepad++ will pre-install a nice config which disables updates and gives you a nice dark theme. If you like to edit configs, game configs, this is really handy. And the rest are kind of just like silent installs. Okay, no, Spotify actually pre-disables hardware acceleration and pre-disables boot on startup. So Spotify will do that. The Spotify installer will do that. The rest of them are just silent installers, just purely to save time because these are quite common things that gamers use. Now, any game launchers, programs, or web browsers you want to disable hardware acceleration, you want to turn off running on startup unless you explicitly want it to run on startup, and deactivate overlays ideally. Now, I'm not saying all overlays are bad. You never know with certain updates on things, and there have been issues in the past with overlays in general with things. So if you've got any apps, ideally try to turn off all of these if you can, especially if they're going to be open while you play games. As an example, if you had Chrome, Spotify, and Discord all running on a second monitor with hardware acceleration on all of them, and you had the Discord overlays on, it's going to affect your performance. Hardware acceleration uses your card to speed up the app. You would lose some GPU performance there. This is your general rule of thumb. Start off by doing that. And now, when it comes to games and game configs, lower GPU usage and higher frame rates reduce latency. Optimize your game settings to achieve this. Further tuning can be done via config files and launch options. Sort of the kind of content I do on YouTube cover this. I do have a GitHub repo for some game configs. If we go to my GitHub here, if you're interested, these kind of game configs which sort of just preset everything in the absolute lowest, and stuff that you can turn down even lower in the config. Obviously, I need to look at updating this and bringing some new games on here. Just letting you guys know if you're after some more performance in games. And like I said, yeah, the rest is sort of just silent installs on common things that people use. Now, MSI Afterburner. This will install a really nice config for MSI Afterburner. So this is going to grab the latest version as of now and pre-do a config for you. So a really nice overlay and a really nice benchmarking config. And I'll show you guys real quick what that looks like now. Make sure if you ever use MSI Afterburner or any kind of logging software, always have GPU power and power percent. Anything that logs GPU power will cause bad 1% lows and bad low frame rates. So there's just a general rule of thumb. Make sure that you have, so we hadn't just installed DirectX yet. So it looks like MSI Afterburner is doing that for us, which is quite nice. Please do look at using this overlay config, guys. It installs MSI Afterburner and RiverTuner. You do not need to have them open in the background. If you want to diagnose an issue, or like check something that's going on, it's going to be really useful. That's finished installing, and we haven't installed a graphics driver yet, so I can't actually show you guys the overlay yet. Scaling. If you're on 4K like me, this app uses legacy scaling, so you'll have to change the scaling in the app here. But I will show you guys the overlay stuff when we get the graphics driver installed. Also, here's another way if you're on 4K, if you need a little bit more, you may need to bring that up. This tells you everything that you need to know. It'll tell you all your CPU cores, what it's boosting to, the temperature, the percentage, the watts, everything you need to know. It'll even show the flip model here, refresh rate of the monitor. Looks like this app is using DirectX 9, the resolution, the frame rate. If you actually press F11, I've preset this F11, it'll benchmark, and F12 to stop, and that benchmark will be saved under C drive, under benchmark. Yeah, really handy and a quick way of testing some things. And say you like to leave MSI Afterburner open, but you want to toggle the overlay on and off. I have preset that to F10 to toggle the overlay on and off. And also, ideally, if you're on a NVIDIA card, you guys are going to want to overclock in here. You set your overclock. This button will apply the overclock on startup, but I will make a note for myself to cover this later. NVIDIA Profile Inspector is a really handy tool. This will sort of just pre-install it straight from the website. Now, this is the slightly older version that lets you import configs in the command line. We had an error there because we don't have the graphics driver installed. This can be really a useful tool for doing certain things. More clock tool. If you're on an AMD card, I highly recommend this, especially if you use the debloated driver, because it'll let you overclock the card and set fast timing, because you can't set fast timing on AMD cards with MS Afterburner. And if you use a debloated driver, you obviously don't have access to overclock your card in the driver page. So this can be really useful. Unfortunately, it only works for 5000 series and above, but most of you will probably be on a card like that anyway. Press enter to continue. It'll just install it for you. And there it is there. A shortcut in your desktop and a shortcut in your start menu. CRU, SI, SRE, some really useful tools. Scale resolution utility and custom resolution utility. I'll show you guys this a little bit later. I just like to use them to clean things up. So I will cover those up a little bit later, I think. I'll just put them to the side there. We need to get the graphics driver installed. Now, because we have blocked Windows from grabbing any drivers for us, because we have full control, we actually don't need to use driver clean here. But if you guys didn't do that, I highly recommend at this stage using driver clean so we can grab our own drivers, because Windows would have grabbed a generic older driver and it would be nice to completely start clean and wipe it and start fresh before we look at updating our graphics drivers. I've got two options here. DDU Auto will automatically remove everything, okay? That'll remove all your sound drivers and all graphics drivers and do it automatically. Manual will give you the option to choose. So manual comes in use where you don't want to uninstall Realtek audio, but you just want to uninstall your graphics driver, or say you have an iGPU and a normal GPU, but you just want to uninstall one of them. That's when you would use manual. So we'll use auto today. Actually, I'll show you guys both. So using auto, it's sort of, I've done it in a way where it's all automated. You guys don't, because before you guys had to go into safe mode, change the DDU settings. So this script actually pre-changes the DDU config to make sure it removes everything. So if you're removing just the graphics driver, and make sure it removes physics and all the other things. So all the settings, it creates a config for DDU where it pre-does all the settings. That's the problem with a lot of these scripts. There's a lot of stuff that goes in the back end. Like if you go to options and settings, there's a lot of settings there to change, make sure it wipes everything. But I've already pre-done that in the script. There's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that you don't necessarily see unless you're going to read the code. But DDU Auto is really nice and it saves a lot of time. So if we want to like roll back a driver, or even if you just like to clean wipe before you install a new driver, it's really, really handy. So most of you would probably use auto, but for some of you that just want to pick and choose what you're uninstalling, you could use manual. So I'll show you guys manual next. So that's just all automated. That just removed everything. So all sound drivers and all graphics drivers, AMD, Intel, and NVIDIA, it just removed all of them all at once. You guys might be familiar with that from my WinSux guide. Now it was completely pointless us doing this on my home build, my pro build with updates blocked completely anyway. I just wanted to show you guys the script in action. I'll also show you guys DDU Auto as well. So DDU Auto 1 and DDU manual. So I wanted to show you guys DDU manual 2, then enter. It's going to do the same thing, but when we're in safe mode, when DDU opens, we get to choose what we want removed. Okay, so here's DDU menu. So we're actually in safe mode and the script has actually opened. So I'll just show you guys. See how we're in safe mode there. And DDU has opened. So now because it's DDU manual, we choose what we want. So say I specifically wanted to keep my iGPU driver and my audio drivers, and I just want to uninstall my NVIDIA driver to update my NVIDIA driver. We can just select GPU and NVIDIA and clean and restart. And this script has actually already turned the safe mode toggle already back off. So when it restarts, it's just going to boot us straight back to normal mode. And this is an absolute lifesaver for saving time. All right, we're back in. So at this stage, we need to look at installing drivers. I've got lots of different options for you guys. So say you want to just grab the latest and you don't want a deep loaded driver. Here is your option here. So I'm going to show you guys the script where it's just going to help you grab the latest driver and not deep load it and not do the settings. This script just grabs the latest driver and installs the latest driver normally without deep loading. This one completely lets you choose the driver that you want, completely strips the driver and does all the settings for you. So I'll show you both. If you use this one, you're going to need to play with these, but if you use this one, it strips the driver and does all of these for you. So let's just do the normal driver install. I will show you guys all three. So we'll press 1 and then enter, and it's just going to grab the latest driver directly from the website and open the installer for us. Here's a little bit of info for you guys using the normal driver with the NVIDIA app. Please try to avoid using game filters. Please try to avoid using the performance overlay unless you're doing a benchmark, because it will affect your frames. So this script will just grab the latest and we can just go ahead and install it. Here we go. We can choose what we want. Now the deep loaded driver obviously is just going to remove everything, just have the pure drive in the control panel. But to show you guys a couple of things you want to turn off in the NVIDIA app, I'm going to install the full driver here. We'll express. You can select clean option back there. There's no need because we've used DDU with driver clean. All right, to install the latest driver. So I'm going to hit close, and I need to show you guys a couple of things with the NVIDIA app that are actually fairly important. We'll hit next here. Make sure you turn this off. If you don't turn this off, NVIDIA is actually going to change your game config settings on the fly to what it thinks that, you know, is more optimized. Their settings are rubbish, right? You want to have full control over what your game graphics settings are going to be, or if you go in the config and turn them down lower or edit them or whatever, please just turn this off. It is an absolute nightmare nightmare. And another thing with game launchers, turn cloud config off too if you can, because otherwise, like whatever settings you do, it's just gonna get reset sometimes, completely bug out. You can leave the overlay on if you want to do recordings. If you don't want to do recordings, you can turn it off. But if you don't want to do recordings, why are you installing the NVIDIA app in the first place, right? What I like to do here is I like to go ahead and this whole scan locations. I like to remove that because I am not using the automatically optimized setting, right? So we can enable and disable the NVIDIA overlay. I'd recommend making sure that game filters is turned off. I like to turn off notifications because they're annoying, and I like to turn that off as well. Now, if you do want to record, I do recommend making sure you have highlights off so they're not always running in the background. Try to avoid using statistics if you can, unless you're genuinely benchmarking, because you'll lose a few frames with that. And I'm pretty sure that just about covers everything. Yeah, it does. But with video capture, if you have one of the newer cards, AV1 is really nice. You will lose a couple more frames compared to just the normal recording method, but if you want sort of like a lossless solution that looks incredible, AV1 is really nice. But that's only really on some of the newer cards. But I'm sure all of you guys are very familiar with this app. But though, I just showed you guys the things to sort of avoid. Now, the next one, NVIDIA settings. This will just do the NVIDIA control panel settings. So I'll show you guys that right now. NVIDIA settings on. That'll do all your control panel settings here. Set up for pure performance. Those are the settings that I'd run for pure performance if that's what you're after, like sort of like the lowest latency. Let's see if it did. I had a script that did these, but I got flagged by antivirus, so that sucks. I should have already set this, so it's already set physics to your actual card. Would have already set this. Is something I like to do. Nothing that really affects performance, just something I like to do. It's already preset that. And if we didn't have the NVIDIA app, it would have already, by the time we restart, it would have already have disabled the show notification tray icon. A lot of things I've automated. Now, see, a lot of people come in here and try to play with this. Do not play with this. If you play with this, it will completely override what this is. Just letting you guys know. Leave this alone. If you want to change things, you change them in here. My config's already done that for you, right? And say we want to revert the NVIDIA settings to a default state is how you can do that. Default state. And then all the NVIDIA settings are default state. So we don't have the enable developer settings. We have to restart. If we restart, that'll be back at auto. Some things in the NVIDIA control panel you have to restart for, but yeah, a lot of these scripts you have to restart for certain things, but yeah, they're all the default settings. Now, HDCP, generally like Netflix is going to work anyway, and lots of apps that use it work anyway. This is probably more or less a placebo thing, but I do remember Linus Tech Tips did do a latency test a long time ago, and it did make like a really small minimal difference on latency. So generally, if you're not having any issues, I'd recommend turning this off completely. Now, I had an option to pre-turn it off on AMD graphics cards, but that got flagged by antivirus. So if you guys on AMD graphics card, you can manually do that in the driver, which I'll show you later. But when we restart, you'll see that this will actually be disabled. You have to restart for that reg key. And if you want it back on, obviously you can just turn it back on. Now, the way that the driver works is the card won't boost to its max all the time. So if you don't care about power saving and you want your card to boost the max all the time, I would recommend using PO state. And this is only for NVIDIA. So I like to use on, and I do believe we're going to need a restart for that one to work. We can see with MSI Afterburner, we do need a restart. So I'll just restart for you guys. Now, it can be really useful if you're just at a latency hog or you're playing more of a CPU bound game where your GPU actually isn't boosting. So if you have like a 5090 like me and you're playing something like Counter-Strike in low settings, the GPU is not going to be boosting. It's only going to be doing GPU boost 2, not the full GPU boost 3. So if you don't care about power savings and you just want to enforce the max boost all the time, this is a nice optimization to do. It is sort of preference, I'll be honest with you. Not a huge difference in latency, but it's just something I like to do. If you're on a laptop and you care about power savings, like if it's like a work laptop or like a study laptop, don't do this. But if it's a laptop that you always keep plugged in, sure, go for it. So now if we open up MSI Afterburner, PO state is on and we're boosting to our max all the time. That's something just I like to do. Now, HDCP, obviously my capture card, I believe, is turned off in the, I see that it's off completely now. It's off and that works. So a lot of these scripts you have to restart. Now, MSI mode is something that should always be on for your graphics card. Some drivers and the manufacturers sort of mess that up. So I will show you guys something really quick. You guys do not need this at all, but I just want to show you that I've automated all this stuff in a script where you don't need, is the tool here. So I've gone to the point with my scripts where I just automate all this stuff and you don't have to download like shady stuff off the internet to change this stuff. As an example, this is MSI utility, and I really don't recommend playing with that, but I just wanted to show you guys something physically instead of showing you in registry. It looks like on this driver, they've enabled MSI mode by default, which is great. MSI mode is the way you've got legacy mode and MSI mode, the way drivers work. MSI mode is better. Please don't play around with this stuff because you can actually brick your Windows completely if you don't know what you're doing. And usually drivers will enable this by default. So as an example, I've noticed some drivers, and NVIDIA have messed up. And it's the same with the AMD. MSI mode won't be on by default for that driver. So I'm actually going to turn it off just to show you guys. This will work on AMD and NVIDIA cards and Intel cards. Anything graphics, I'll turn it off and on. So if I reopen this tool, needed to run it as admin. There's a little stuff that goes behind the scenes to see. Now MSI mode is off, but we obviously want that on. So this will force MSI mode on if you have an Intel card, an AMD card, an NVIDIA card. And you don't need to worry about third-party dodgy tools like this. It's all done in a native PowerShell script for you. That's just a good one to do. Just force that on just in case that, NVIDIA screw up their driver or AMD or Intel screw up their driver and they don't enable it by default, or they've forgotten to, the driver developers forgotten to. You should definitely be using MSI mode for your driver. Let's install DirectX. I do know that MSI Afterburner already installed it. Some of you might not have installed MSI Afterburner, so I'll show you guys what that looks like. Just downloading DirectX, and now we install it. This one installs all the C++ packages which are required for certain games and programs. I had some people in the comments of one of my WinSux videos saying, why are you installing all this bloat? This is not bloat at all. This is the fundamental stuff that certain programs and games use and need. And the reason why I install all of them, so none of you guys get an error when you try to play any certain game. Now, yes, 8 times out of 10, a game launcher will pre-install it for you for the required game, but I've seen lots of apps and programs where I completely forget to do that. You try to open the game and say, as an example, the game's trying to use a C++ from 2012 and you get an error message, the game won't open, you don't know why. This will install all of them and take care of that for you. And they're not going to run in the background or bloat your system at all. So just run this and it will install all of the C++ packages. The download might take a little while. It's going to download 12 of them and then install 12 of them. And I used to use a function called get file from web, which would download things a lot quicker in PowerShell. And unfortunately, I can't use that anymore because for some reason it lagged by virus total, even though there's nothing malicious about it. So I've had to go back to the old method of IWR. So sometimes the downloads take a little bit longer, and that's just how it is. So now it's just installing all the C++ packages. And guys, this isn't bloat. You're going to need it for certain apps and games, so you might as well get it done now. If I go back to uninstall program, you'll see it is installed all 12 of them for all games. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, all of them ready to go. Here's a good idea to look at changing your resolution and refresh rate. So you could do it here. If you have an NVIDIA card, you can do it in NVIDIA control panel, but just go, max out your refresh rate. Make sure you're running the native resolution for your monitor. Go set that there. And then HAGs and window mode. So I highly recommend making sure these two are on. Hardware accelerated GPU scheduling for 98% of games and situations you want this on. It will boost your frames. Are some scenarios on some games, which is very far and few between, where you turn this off and you can get a little boost in frames, usually in CPU bound situations. Generally when I do a game video, a game config video, it's one of the things I test. Always leave this option on. It is really handy. It's great because it allows you to play DirectX 11 and under games in borderless full screen mode, which is so nice for easy alt tabbing. It'll also work for Vulkan and OpenGL as well. Now with DirectX 12, it doesn't matter because you can already play every game in borderless full screen mode, no problem. But this mode will let you play all the games essentially in borderless windowed mode with the same frame rate and the same latency, but being able to alt tab a lot easier instead of getting that little annoying black flickering when you alt tab out of the game. So just leave this on. It does no harm. Because I've got the NVIDIA card plugged in right now, I will show you the all-in-one debloater script that does all the settings for you. So we'll go through that. I'm just DDUing so I can start completely fresh. Or I'll back in and I've completely DDU'd. So completely clean the driver. I want to show you guys the driver install and debloat settings. So if I run this, I am not going to need to run any of these ones at all. They're already going to be done. So, and just to let you guys know, if you DDU, you don't have to reinstall DirectX or C++. They'll already be done. It's not end of the world if you run them again. It's just not necessary, if that makes sense. So we'll run driver install and debloat settings. So I need to show you guys this with the AMD and the Intel card as well. So this basically just does everything kind of like how WinSux did it. So, and I've done it in a way where you have to pick your GPU driver because this is really useful because some people are on all the cards that don't accept newer drivers, or some people want to pick and choose the driver, or as an example, some of the NVIDIA drivers as of late have been kind of bad. So if you wanted to manually pick and choose, and I figured like for the bloated driver, you guys could just manually go and check it and download it. So there's no point having a script for that. So you can just go to the website. So I'll go select the driver here. And as an example, if I wanted the latest one, I'll grab the latest, which is going to be here. Or if I want a sort of more stable one, and at the moment, sort of this driver's been good to me, I'm going to grab this one to pick what driver I want here. Wait for it to finish downloading. Now you don't need to open the driver. You just have to download the driver that you want. To just download the driver that you want. Once you've downloaded the driver that you want, don't open it. Just close the web browser. Press enter to continue here. And it will say select downloaded driver. So you get a little window that pops up. It'll ask you to select the downloaded driver. So a little window popped up. It should be in my download. I'll go downloads. I'll select the driver and then I'll press open. You can also double click it too. Double clicking works, I believe, as well. If you accidentally double clicked it, that's fine. So what this script is actually doing, it is extracting the driver, removing all the bloat, installing the debloated driver, pre-applying the NVIDIA settings, you know, the PO state, the MSI mode, pre-applying the HTCP off, just doing it all. So as an example, if you really like a minimum clean driver like this, it can be really easy to just automate. You just run driver clean and then that one, and then everything is done. Just really, really nice. This is very similar to what you guys saw in WinSux. And when I say I'm debloating the driver, guys, I mean I am debloating the driver. Like, it is just the driver and the control panel, and that goes the same for the AMD and for Intel. So there's no need to use tools like NV Clean Install. This does it for you. There's no need to use Radeon Software Slimmer. This does it for you. And with Intel, there's actually no driver clean solution that I have seen. So I just simply bought an Intel card and made one. For the few of you out there that are on an Intel driver that want sort of a minimal debloated experience on an Intel graphics card. Okay, this is going to open a whole bunch of stuff. But basically what the script wants us to do is set your sound, resolution, refresh rate, primary display. So you could set all those, you know, set your refresh rate there, or set your refresh rate in the NVIDIA control panel. The reason why I've done it this way is if you typically like to change your bitrate in color, Windows will turn automatic color management on. So this script will actually turn it off for you after you've applied it. So, you know, do all that, set your sounds and stuff like that. But I'm going to do that later on in the guide, show you guys that. So press enter to continue, and then it's going to restart, because for a lot of the settings that get applied, especially in the NVIDIA control panel, HTCP, PO state, as you saw, require restart. So we're just restarting to make sure everything applied properly. All right, we're in. So this is the full debloated driver. You guys might have seen that in WinSux. It's just the driver and the control panel. That's all that gets installed, nothing else. No schedule tasks, no nothing, no rubbish. All the driver settings are done. PO state's already done. HTCP is already off. It's sort of like all done for you. So kind of nice. So I'm going to DDU again, and now I'm going to plug in my AMD graphics card, and I'll cover the AMD graphics stuff. You AMD graphics card users out there. All right, I've DDU'd and I've plugged in my AMD graphics. So we'll go to graphics and let's just install the normal driver. So this will actually grabs the AMD web installer. So if you don't want chipset drivers installed, you're going to have to make sure you don't select them here. The AMD web installer is just sort of easy because it just will sort of grab the latest. And so this is the only way that I can grab the latest, just makes it easier. So if you just make sure you click do not install, because I don't want that bloat on my machine at all. I just want just the driver. So I'll go accept and install. All right, so I'm going to uncheck that and uncheck that. Now on my RX 570, I occasionally get this stupid annoying driver timeout thing that happens sometimes. So if that happens to you, it actually used to happen on my 6900 XT as well. So if that happens to you, just give the PC a restart. AMD drivers definitely aren't perfect, unfortunately, but that's just the way it is. But a lot of you on some newer cards won't have as much of an issue. I've restarted, so a lot of you guys probably won't have to do that if you didn't have the bug like I get sometimes. So we can do the AMD settings. So to do the AMD settings, we'll turn them on. Now this is actually going to require a restart, this one. So just let the script do its thing. It actually needs to open up the Adrenaline control panel to make sure notifications get turned off the way it works in registry. So just give it a little bit of time. Okay, that's done. Now HTCP is only for NVIDIA. PO state is only for NVIDIA, but we can do MSI mode. We'll just enforce that MSI mode is on just in case this driver didn't have it on, and then we'll restart. All right, we've restarted. Let's go into the AMD control panel. So we can either get to the AMD control panel by going here, or we can find it from the start menu. Not in recommended. We haven't dealt with the start menu. But yeah, we'll just go through it this way. Put up the AMD control panel. So all notifications are turned off. Tuning and performance is turned on, ready to go, but nothing is tuned. It's already sort of like turned on. I've been able to automate. What else did I automate? I was able to automate this. All the settings are sort of done here. And I go to settings. These are all turned off. Everything's sort of like ready to go. Hotkeys are already off. Preferences are already all off. So everything's sort of like automated, which is nice. Now, if you're on an AMD card, unfortunately, I can't automate this because I get flagged by Defender and VirusTotal. I'd recommend turning off HTCP, turning that off. And if your colors look a little weird, probably come in here, that, maybe try 7200. Remember, I really like that on my certain monitor, but it's more of a preference thing. So give that a bit of a go. And you know, up to you what you want to do with FreeSync, obviously. And that's pretty much the AMD bloated driver. And if you wanted to overclock in the driver, you could do it here. And just keep in mind, this method of overclocking is actually unreliable, and AMD will randomly turn this off. So I'm going to DDU and I'm going to show you the de-bloated driver that doesn't come with all the rubbish that the Radeon brings, because the Radeon rubbish brings a whole bunch of stuff on the machine. So let's DDU and then I'll show you guys the de-bloated driver. All right, so we've completely DDU'd. Let's go and try the de-bloated driver. Do for AMD, then enter. So it's very similar to the process of NVIDIA. So we'll have to go ahead and download our driver. Do not download the web installer. The web installer will not work with this. Okay, you have to actually go and get your driver. So select your card, whatever it may be. Most of you are going to be on one of these cards. So I've got an RX 570, a really old thing. I need to grab this one. Don't open the driver once you've downloaded it. Just download the driver. That's all you need to do. Okay, then you can close the web browser. Press enter to continue. Wait about 5 seconds and a window will pop up. Okay, now we select our driver. That's going to be in the downloads folder. Click that, click open. It's going to do the same thing here. It's going to extract the driver and it's actually going to edit the JSON files and make sure the driver gets installed on the minimal and all the settings done and completely debloated. Remove all the unnecessary drivers and the necessary programs that run in the background. So you just end up with just the driver and just the control panel. That's it. All right, so just press that. That's fine. Some of you guys might not get that. A lot of you guys on 9000 series cards, you'll probably get an RSS CMD error. That's the driver trying to open the recording overlay thing, which doesn't exist. So some of you guys might get an error. Yeah, just ignore that error message. So same thing again, set your refresh rate, resolution, default sound devices, all of that stuff. And then press enter to continue. Then it will restart. So now we've restarted. Let's go to the control panel. So this is the de-bloated driver, guys. So the normal driver comes with a bunch of overlay stuff in the background. Comes with the crash defender service, the maintenance service, and a whole bunch of rubbish. This just installs the driver in the control panel. That's it. It does have one service, but you really need that for monitor hot plug and play. But that gets left. So notifications are off. We are on the minimal driver too. All the settings are done. As you can see, I'm just going to change that because I prefer colors like that. You guys, like I said, will have to manually turn off HDCP because I'm unable to automate that. All the settings are done in here. Everything's done in here and you end up with a really clean solution. I could go in a little bit more depth showing you guys auto runs with services and drivers and the extra stuff that gets installed with the bloated AMD driver, but I don't have enough time to do that in this video. Now, if you want to overclock your graphics card with the minimum driver and the de-bloated driver, you can either use more clock tool, which unfortunately isn't supported for my card, so I can't show you guys too well. This is what it looks like on a 6000 series and a 7000 series card. You can get your min and max frequency. You can overclock it here. You can set your memory frequency, voltage, GPU power, memory fast timing. So memory fast timing on some of the newer cards will be on and off. Okay, I just got a 9070X to just show you what it looks like. So if you wanted to overclock the core clock, you would just put 100 here. That would be plus 100. You want to overclock the memory, you could put 2600, you know, that'd be plus whatever that is. You want to make sure you can put fast timing to enable GPU power, put it at 110, which will make set the power limit. I would recommend using more clock tool for overclocking on the minimal driver, really for the fact that you can change the memory timing level. Whereas if you wanted to overclock with MSI Afterburner, you don't have access to the fast memory timing. Now, one thing that I've left out of my optimization guide is disable ULPS on AMD cards. Please do not disable ULPS. This is in the advanced folder if you guys want to play around with it. ULPS causes massive issues with hardware accelerated GPU scheduling. You'll lose a lot of frames. So, I mean, we don't have it here because I'm on an older card. So on this older card, I probably would disable it. But if you're on a newer card, 7000 series and 9000 series, I believe, have hardware accelerated GPU scheduling. Please don't disable ULPS. Like I've said, I've got a script that does that. But yeah, you could overclock here, but you'd be better off just using more clock tool if you're on the minimal driver. If you're on the full driver, you could probably just use it in the driver, but it's not very reliable, whereas more clock tool is reliable. I'm going to plug in my Intel graphics card, my ARC graphics card, and I'll show you guys what that will look like. And it's basically the same if you have iGPU as well, guys. This method works with the iGPU driver. You guys might have seen in my WinSux guide, I covered the you can use these with the iGPU drivers as well, whether you're on Intel or AMD. Works flawlessly. Right, with DDU'd, I've plugged in my Intel card, but this will be the same process if you're on iGPU. Same with the AMD, like I showed you before. The graphics, and I'm going to start with the debloat first, because when you install the normal driver, DDU actually doesn't get rid of a whole bunch of rubbish that still gets installed. So I want to start with the debloated driver first, and I'll show you guys what the debloated driver looks like first. So we'll go Intel. Okay, this will actually take you to the page where just all the drivers are, graphics drivers are, which is really nice. So if you're iGPU, you choose that. If you're on an ARC card, you choose that. 7th and 10th gen, choose that. And I'll just let you guys know that these scripts aren't supported for this driver. Unfortunately, it's a different installer package. So if you've got a really old laptop, I'm sorry, you're sort of on your own there. If it's 6th gen and under, you're kind of going to have to figure out how to debloat that on your own. So I've got support from 7th gen, iGPU all the way up to the latest, and then obviously the ARC cards. So we'll grab the driver. We will not open it. It will just download the driver. That's all we need to do. The driver's downloaded. We'll close the web browser, press enter to continue. We'll say select downloaded driver. Once again, we'll need to go to our downloads folder and select the driver we've just downloaded. Click open. We'll go ahead and debloat the driver completely. Only install the driver in the control panel. None of the other rubbish that comes with the driver. And there's a lot of rubbish that comes with this one. This is probably one of the worst, I think, the Intel drivers, especially because they kind of force presentmon to be on and always run in the background, which actually logs a fair bit of CPU and GPU usage. The AMD and the Intel drivers take a little bit longer to install, so you just have to be patient. All right, it is done. So now we would set a refresh rate, resolution, sound device, default sound device, press enter to continue, and it's going to go ahead and restart for us. All right, we're back on the desktop. So the debloated driver is really nice on Intel, and I wish there was a way for it to come out like that by default. I wish I could show you guys auto runs, all the services and drivers that it brings, but it's a really, really clean solution. Now let's open up the Intel control panel. So with the Intel control panel, we're actually going to have to access that from the store. So Intel graphics software, open that from the start menu, sorry. Okay, so go to settings, preferences, elementary logging is already turned off, ready to go. Performance, presentmon is not on and it's not logging, so you won't see all the sensors here. And that's a problem with the new driver. It has sort of presentmon baked in and it's always running in the background. The tuning actually works, so if you wanted to tune the card, you can do it here. Now, if you have this, I'd recommend turning it off. That's mainly going to be laptop users. It kind of messes up the text a little bit. And then I decided not to automate variable refresh rate. You choose if you want that on or off, because when I forced it off with registry, it sort of bugged out when people were trying to use it to turn it on. So you can set that for yourself. And there's not much to the graphics really. VSync is off. So if you want that back on, you can turn it on. FPS limiter is off. And low latency mode has caused major issues with some people that are gaming and have Discord and Spotify open. So we've just left it off. And that's this sort of debloated driver. So now I will show you guys the bloated driver and all the rubbish it actually brings. I will DDU and install the bloated driver. Let's download and install the normal driver. Breathe and enter. Same thing again. You guys are probably wondering why I'm re-downloading the driver. Well, my script actually deletes the old download file too. So it kind of cleans up after itself, which is quite nice. So with this script, it just takes you to the web page. There's no way for me to sort of like automatically download and run it. So you guys are going to have to just manually run it if you want the bloated driver. Now you can obviously customize this here and remove a bunch of rubbish, but it actually doesn't remove everything, unfortunately. There is still a bunch of bloat that sort of gets installed and things that log in the background regardless. So that's why the debloated option is really, really nice. All right, it says boot, reboot recommended. So we'll go ahead and do the reboot. All right, the bloated driver is installed. It installs a whole bunch of rubbish. Let's do the settings. Unfortunately, there's really not much to the settings here. So I don't believe we need to restart from memory for the settings for this guy. Let's see. Yeah, no, we don't need to restart for this, but the problem is without debloating, I can't automate this one. And same thing again. If you guys recommend turning that off, change your variable refresh rate mode. How else would I set it up? So yeah, there's no option to disable presentmon from running in the background. It's just constantly sitting there and running until presentmon. It's constantly logging CPU usage, and I believe it logs GPU usage as well. This driver comes with a whole bunch of bloat. It actually comes with a whole bunch of drivers as well. It comes with that. It actually installs these, which I don't know why. Like, you don't even need them. I suppose it might be for presentmon or something like that. No, it's not even for presentmon. You can use presentmon without it. So anyway, I'm going to completely wipe this. And so that's sort of the Intel. So you could obviously use MSI mode as well for Intel if you wanted it as well. So I will DDU and I will plug my NVIDIA card back on my NVIDIA card with the debloat setting, that one there. So I don't actually need to run that one, or that one. You only need to run those if you just install the normal driver. So we've already done that. And I guess before we go to the next stage of everything in Windows, I'll probably just show you some of these apps, the MSI Afterburner overlay. Okay. So it's really handy as a tool, especially if you only have a single monitor and you want to kind of just, let's pretend like this is a game in like full screen, right? You could alt tab the game if you want to see what's going on. And then you could just like open up MSI Afterburner and then tapping back into the game. MSI Afterburner will actually hook into the game as an example. So this will display over your game, which is really, really handy because it'll tell you what the exe file is, everything you need to know, the flip model. This is a really bad flip model to be in. You want to be in legacy flip, hardware independent flip, or hardware composed flip. So this is actually a really bad flip model to be in, but it makes sense. We're in windowed mode. Windowed full screen borderless mode is okay. But it's, yeah, windowed mode. This is OpenGL. So do use this overlay if you like. F10 to disable, F10 to enable, F11 to start benchmarking, F12 to stop. Really handy tool. And you don't have to run it. Like if you have it closed, it's not going to run in the background at all. And you know, probably now's a good idea if you wanted to dial in your graphics card overclock. So I'm going to dial in mine somewhere around here, and then I'll press this to apply on startup. And then yeah, the other tool I wanted to show you guys, NVIDIA NVIDIA Profile Inspector. Pretty handy to just have if you want to do niche things. Say you want to enforce a higher frame gen model in a game that the NVIDIA app doesn't let you. You can do it here. You want to force a different DLSS model. I mean, so the sky's the limit. It's like the NVIDIA control panel on steroids. It's a really nice tool that I like to use all the time. Custom resolution utility. If I want to display scaled resolution, it's a custom and stretched. I generally do that. I've got a video on that as well. And then there's also scaled resolution utility. And I'll show you guys that you can actually like delete your GPU scaled resolutions. So these control your display scaled resolutions and these control your GPU scaled resolution. What I might actually do is I might plug in my main monitor to show you guys how much you can make this fairly clean, and it's kind of nice. I plugged in my main 4K monitor. So typically I have some custom resolutions that I have set up in here, and I tend to just delete everything that I'm not using. I don't recommend you guys doing this from a performance standpoint or anything. I just want to show you scale resolution utility sort of in action. I've basically gone out of my way to sort of delete everything because this monitor doesn't let me turn off HDR at all. So I was able to do it that way. And these are the resolutions I like to benchmark games with. And this is the resolution that I use for my Steam Deck when I use Steam Remote Play. When I play like a heavy GPU game and want to stream it to my Stream Deck. That's kind of nice. But the problem with that is that's for the display scaled resolutions. And then there's a whole bunch of other rubbish that sort of NVIDIA includes for GPU scaled reses. So I like to sort of clean that up. This is a kind of nice way to sort of clean all of that up. I recommend most of you not doing this unless you know what you're doing, but I just sort of wanted to show you. This will actually delete like all the GPU scaled resolutions. Okay. And then I'll just restart. So that applies. Now, if you are having issues after doing this, like you've got a complete black screen, plug your monitor into a different port and go into the CRU folder and run reset all and then run restart 64, and then you'll be able to plug it back into the normal port. Or you could simply go to device manager and uninstall the monitor, whether it be hidden or currently active, or it should be hidden. So that's one way, but I've got a dedicated video on CRU, so go watch that if you get stuck. I just wanted to show you that was kind of cool, and we kind of had a pre-install for scaled resolution utility. So now when I go here, basically all the GPU scaled resolutions are gone, and it's only what I have set in display driver, what I have set into custom resolution utility. So not really going to help you from a performance standpoint, but if you're on a OCD crazy level like me, it's kind of really nice. Now, if you've installed the normal Intel bloated driver and then you wanted to try the debloated driver, just showing you guys that it does install some extra things that you more than likely won't need. So I'm just going to remove these. Unfortunately, DDU doesn't pick these up, but it kind of makes sense. DDU wouldn't do these two because there are some programs that actually rely on these. I know, for example, DS4, I believe, relies on those, one of those two. I've actually not seen this one before, so I'm not aware of any program that's reliant on that one. And then Intel's actually left that behind as well. It's kind of annoying. It's somehow hooked into search, which is ridiculous. Wow, that's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. Oh, it is literally like a spyware, the default Intel driver. I'm going to end task and retry. You guys shouldn't have to do that. That's just ridiculous. Okay, that's all gone. So let's continue on with where we were. We're up to Windows. So I got some juicy stuff here. Some cool stuff with Windows. Start menu taskbar. Click on your start menu, your taskbar, everything's sort of nice and clean. There's a default option that completes to like nuke everything from the taskbar, import a start layout, and then also do it as list. So really nice and clean here. That's done. You'll have to reopen this because for it to apply instantly, it has to restart Explorer. That's done. To save time, I won't show the default option, but it does work. Start menu layout. This is if you ever wanted to roll back to the old style of Windows 11 start menu layout. You could use default. If you run this, we're currently on new right now, but if you wanted to run the default layout, you could use the default layout. You press 2 and then enter. Please restart because it won't apply instantly, or you can't even sign out and sign in. You actually have to restart a lot of these scripts to work properly. Start menu shortcuts. This creates a bunch of short in the start menu that are really handy. Okay, it'll open up these two, the two program shortcut locations. It'll open up those two just if you wanted to clean up your start menu. It creates a folder, start menu shortcuts 1, which is what we're in, start menu shortcuts 2. So there's where all the start menu shortcuts get put, right? So as an example, if you don't like things in subfolders, you could move them directly here. So it's not in an annoying subfolder, if that makes sense, like that. So as an example with MS Afterburner, you could simply move it here and delete the folder. So it's just nice and cleanly in there. Sometimes you need to restart for the start menu to refresh, not always. Yeah, just wanted to show you guys that. You guys can always access those folders in your start menu. You just go to start menu shortcuts 1, and then you can manage. I would recommend not touching the default folders. It'll completely bug out shortcut for Windows. Same with these. I recommend not doing the default ones. It'll bug things out. But you know, for third-party apps, like say Edge was in it, like as an example, an app was like I showed you with MS Afterburner, it was in a subfolder. That's kind of annoying. It's very ugly for it to be in a subfolder. Why can't it be the app directly there? There's start menu programs 1 and start menu menu programs too. So if you want something to run on boot that's like third party, you could put a shortcut in here and it'll actually run on boot. It's kind of handy. This just gives you a little bit more control over the start menu that Windows usually doesn't give you, which is kind of nice. Context menu. This is a really nice one. The context menu by default is quite bloated in my opinion. I really don't like this. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that I don't use, such as like, you know, open in terminal, include in library, some rubbish. I like the clean option, just sort of cleans things up. I believe we will need a restart for this. So if we're gonna have a look now we've got this sort of like the legacy context menu and without a whole bunch of rubbish, just a really sort of simple thing. And it's the same with folders as well. You right click here, it's just really clean. More of a personal preference. Some of you guys might not like that. If you guys are ever curious like what stuff does, you can just like open it up, and I've actually commented on everything that happens, and everything can be safely reverted back to a complete vanilla state because that's how I've made things. So you can safely revert back to a vanilla state. Theme black is really nice. Makes the theme black more darker than what you can do from a vanilla Windows. This is really nice. And then the revert option works fine too. Sign out, lock screen, wallpaper black. This is a nice one as well. It makes the lock screen and the wallpaper just completely black. So let's go to the lock screen. I'm not sure if we need a restart for that. I'll sign out. Yes, it's nice and black. It's really clean. Here's a sign in screen. Really clean dark. Revert option works. User account pictures black. This is more of a niche one. But the revert option works fine. You see this little picture here. I can actually make that dark. That was a request of one of my viewers. So I'll just show you what that looks like. Now we need a restart for this to apply. So here it is there. It's all completely blacked out. Yeah, it just sort of makes it more of a blackout. And if you wanted to revert it, you can revert it, but make sure you restart after you do that. Let's put this at the default value. Restart. I've restarted and we are back to normal. So widgets are super annoying. It should never be turned on. So we can turn them off here, toggle them on and off here. If you run my control panel settings, it's going to turn them off anyway. Same with Copilot. If you run my control panel settings, it's going to turn them off anyway. But I figured some people would want like a revert option. Game mode, always recommend having this on. This will get any UWP apps in the background to not sort of run and go sort of like in a sleep state. Game mode is a good thing. Leave it on. It's not one of those things that's bugged anymore. Like it used to be bugged years ago for OBS. That's all been fixed now. Please just always leave game mode on. Point of precision. So if you apply my control panel settings, like literally these are done. But I really highly recommend having that off. I'm going to talk about mouse acceleration a little bit later, but you always ideally want to run 6 out of 11 that off and 100% scaling in Windows. But for higher scaling, if you're on a higher resolution like me, I have a solution so we don't get mouse acceleration, but we will talk about that later. As far as like all the other settings in here, they kind of get done with control panel settings because control panel settings will do everything in control and the immersive control panel complete. Scaling just takes you to scaling if you wanted to change it. Notepad settings. This is all stuff that got included in the WinSux guide and I thought it was kind of cool. So I wanted to give people the option to like revert things if they wanted to or reapply something. So all that's going to do here is apply the notepad settings. So I open notepad, I go here. It's going to have like Copilot off by default and it'll also start a new session because I hate how every time if you have a bunch of windows open, it actually happened to me before you guys saw it. They'll stay open all the time. So this is sort of like a normal notepad behavior. Control panel settings. This does a lot of stuff in the control panel, immersive control panel, like everything. So after you've run this, please restart if you want the settings to apply. And it is fine if you guys just want to like speed run through all these scripts, then restart after that works too. All right. So if you're in a higher resolution like me, this forces 100% scaling and enhanced point of precision off just so people aren't getting mouse acceleration. But if you're on a high resolution like me, go to system display, turn off custom scaling and sign out, sign back in, and then you can set whatever you want your scaling to. And then I'll show you a little bit later when it comes to mouse acceleration in Windows and how to counter that if you want to use higher scaling. So I guess I better briefly show you, it does so many, like everything that you could possibly think of that is like annoying, it will do. So just turn all this rubbish off and all this rubbish off, just everything in here. I'm not going to go through everything because the video is already going to be like way too long. And like all the immersive control panel settings, you know, like Windows backup, and I've made it work on Microsoft accounts too. So if you're in a Microsoft account, like this stuff is sort of all done, like everything's off, you know, all this rubbish is off. There's anything that you can think of for a power user, like it is done, right? It is done, all done. So moving on, and there's a revert option too. If something is bugged for you, or well, not bugged, but you know, you prefer a certain feature, there's always a revert option. The sound, you probably would have done that before in the graphics option, but I've left it all now. The registry already did these two. The control panel settings already did these two, but obviously you're going to want to set like your default mic and hide it, what you're not using, see the default speakers and hide what you're not using. That's what I like to do. I like to clean things up. Now I actually have a script that will re-enable enhancements tab. You don't have it available to you. Unfortunately, I cannot show it here in action if the device doesn't support support enhancements tab, this will get it back. Now, if you are on a Realtek driver on Windows 11, you need to uninstall the Realtek driver either in the control panel setting, then the immerse or device manager, restart, and then this script will work. But for other devices, say you have like a soundbar blaster card or a DAC or something like that, and you don't have the enhancements tab, this script will simply enable the enhancements tabs for all the connected sound devices. It'll unhide it for all of them. But specifically, if you're on Realtek and Windows 11, you need to roll back to the default Windows driver for it to work. But yeah, that'll work for anything else, right? So device manager, power savings, and wake. What is this doing? So if I go to some of my USB stuff, see if I can find mouse and keyboard or something. There are these like legacy features that are turned on by default. Better properties. So those are on. Wake is on here. Like allow the computer to turn off this. So what this script will do is every single USB device that is currently connected, it'll turn off wake and power saving features, like absolutely everything that is connected. And it will also turn them off for here as well, like the chipset type things. Obviously we don't have chipset drivers installed because we block Windows updates from grabbing them, which is beautiful, but it'll also turn it off. So USB, basically everything. The network one is separate as well. So there's network adapter, power, and wake. I'll show you guys that in action too. So by default, these are on. We have on this, well, actually I need to install the LAN drivers before we do this. So let's do this now. And we should have done that earlier on in the video. I'll install the LAN driver. This would be ideal because we don't actually have access to all the power saving features in there yet. I'll go ahead and install this LAN driver. All right, that's installed now because I just want to kill two birds with one stone to show you guys. So now that I've installed the driver, we'll have access to energy efficient Ethernet by advanced energy efficient Ethernet. Here, gigabyte light, green Ethernet. These are all power saving features. Typically, if you're a power user, I would want to turn all of these off. It'll also turn like off wake as well. That's a feature I will never use. And those. So these two scripts will take care of that. All the device manager, power, like the USB ones and the chipset ones off, and it'll only work for the devices that are currently plugged in. So if you plug in a whole bunch of other USB devices later on, you can go and rerun it, or you could go manually do it, but manually doing it, screw that when I've automated everything. So we'll turn the network on off, and I will restart to show you guys what sort of that looks like. We have to restart to apply for this one. For a lot of scripts, we have to restart to apply. Okay, I'll show you guys what that looks like. Let's find some USB devices that have it. So that's so all these are going to be off now. Every single one. Wake and power saving is off completely on every single USB device, every single chipset device, all off. I might just change to 225 scaling to make your life a little bit easier to see what I'm doing. Some of you might be on a mobile phone. Now, what else? Oh, the network. I need to show you guys the network. So network adaptive power management is off. Energy efficient Ethernet, gigabyte light, green Ethernet. So I've added support for Intel and Realtek LAN, but other ones like Killer, sorry, I wasn't able to do. So power saving mode is off. I don't touch that with the other ones, right? Just the ones that are power saving, and wake is off. And I have my board has 2 LAN ports, and it actually works for anything that's sort of plugged in at the time. It's not, you can see power saving mode all done, completely done. It's a nightmare to figure it out and how to automate it, and also the revert option, but I figured it out. Network IPv4 only. This doesn't really do anything. It's just something I like to do. I'm not using anything in an IPv4, so I turn everything off. So basically what it's going to do now, this is maybe a little confusing. If you only have one LAN, it'll only show like one, but because I have 2 LAN ports, it's showing 2. So essentially, I guess I've got it to just show in PowerShell for simplicity's sake, but I will show you guys where you can manually go and enable it, I guess. So if we go here, it just turns everything off. I believe you have to restart for the QoS one, but everything off other than IPv4. Everything off other than IPv4. So that one's kind of bugged because we've got to restart, but yeah, you guys get the point. It literally says, oh no, it says true. QoS is true. Interesting. Maybe because last time I got this script to apply it twice, and maybe that's why I was doing that. If I rerun it again, it'll probably enforce it. Oh, that worked. That one's false now. So just something I like to do. I'm not saying it's going to help you or anything, but so right hash buffer flushing. So what this is will boost your NVMe performance a little bit, but there is a small risk of data loss if you have important work running and you abruptly turn the PC off. For most gamers, it's not a big deal. This will turn it off on all drives. Get a nice little boost in read and write. So we'll turn it off and restart, and that'll actually be off for all drives. I've restarted. I go to all the drives. That's a USB stick. I've obviously accidentally, there it is there. So turn off write capture is there. All set. And the revert option works flawlessly. So if you're not doing sort of important work all the time and the power's not just going to like randomly go off and you're worried about losing it, if you're a gamer, generally speaking, I would do that because you get some nice read and write boost performance on your NVMe drive. What are we up to next? So game bar. Game bar, they don't let you disable it anymore in Windows. Windows 10 you can, Windows 11 you can't. So the only way to do it is actually completely uninstall it. And so that's what this does. This completely uninstalls Game Bar. And I've added support now. If you ever play games through Xbox Game Pass, that'll actually work now, whereas before it didn't with this script, so now it does. Now if I try to press Windows key G, nothing happens, and Game Bar is completely gone. All the Xbox stuff is completely gone as well. If you wanted to go play an Xbox Game Pass game, that'll work flawlessly, and it may reinstall some of that stuff. The Edge and Edge Web View, this stuff is horrible. It is completely baked into the system now, and we want to get rid of it entirely. Look, Copilot's running WebView. We've got the full option to uninstall Edge, but before we do that, I am going to install a different web browser. Would be a good idea. Go with Brave, because why not? Number 6. I'll open Brave. All the settings will be done. Tab block already installed. Service and schedule tasks aren't running in the background. Settings will be done in Brave as well. Might as well show you guys really quick. Power acceleration off. Memory saver already be on. You can have this web browser open while you play games and not worry. Everyone says defaults, and I might as well set it as default because at this stage we're going to be removing Edge, so might as well go ahead and do that. Let's completely wipe Edge, and you can safely revert it if need be. This will get rid of Edge and WebView. Now there are a few programs that rely on WebView. 95% of them will reinstall WebView for you when you install the app. So if it's through the store, no problem, it'll work, and most other stuff will. If it's like that one app where it doesn't reinstall WebView and it's not working, there's always the option to run the revert script, and the revert script will reinstall Edge and reinstall WebView for you. So Edge is completely gone, wiped off the face of the earth, completely gone, and WebView is not running in the background at all. It is completely gone. It's not baked into anything, just like the old style of Windows, which is how it should be. Now bloatware. Also remove all bloatware, but we're keeping some things purely for functionality. I'll show you guys really quick. We're keeping any video encoder extensions, Paint. We're keeping photos. We're keeping shell experiences, obviously because I break the shell. We're keeping Notepad, NVIDIA control panel. There's some things that I've added for support for server and enterprise, just so it doesn't break server and enterprise. Because believe it or not, server gives you full control, and you can actually remove sec health and defender with server this way. So obviously, I don't want to break it for anyone with server. So this will clean up all the bloat. And the way it's removing it is it's removing things safely, and they can always be reverted. The debloat script will take a little while, so you just need to be patient with it. It's going to remove all the bloatware, the UWP bloatware, the legacy feature bloatware, the UWP feature bloatware, and legacy feature bloatware, aka remote desktop and OneDrive. At any point you feel like it's getting stuck, you can always check Task Manager. You'll see CPU usage happen there. That's removed everything. If you wanted to revert some stuff, you can. So say you wanted the store installed, because this actually removes the store, whereas my WinSux guide doesn't, because it's going to give you like full control. You can press 3 and then enter. It'll reinstall the store, and it will actually redo the store settings as well, because when you uninstall and reinstall the store, it sets it to the default state. So it's actually reapplying the store setting. There they are, they're done. Some of you might not want the store, so here's an option to just not have the store at all. If you want all the UWP, there's that option there that'll bring it back. If you want the UWP features back, you'll have to manually grab those, because I did make a script to bring these back, but it completely bugged out Windows. Windows is really weird like that with the features stuff. So here's the default list for 11, and here's the default list for 10. And say you wanted to bring this stuff back, you could go view features. You could see available features, and say you wanted steps recorder, bring it back there, turn it on. Now, just letting you guys know, if you do add some of this stuff back, sometimes Windows can be a little bit buggy, so you might only be able to add 1 or 2, restart, and then the other ones. It's just the way the Windows is. But basically this we're going to get to that later. Press enter to continue. This script will actually loop you back to the menu. Install, what are we up to? Install UWP features. So no, we're up to uninstall legacy features, so that's number 6. So the default state for 11 and the default state for 10. All right, so 11, if you want it back to a default state, you can just recheck the ones that you see there and press OK, and then restart, obviously. Same with 10 there. So I basically just remove everything. I just keep this one on because this is dependent on programs and games. There are other programs and games that you may need to install this. This does not get installed by default. And I know if you play really old legacy games, you will need to reinstall, you will need to install direct play, because that won't be on by default. Anyway, I'll press enter here. Legacy features. So we covered that. Okay, OneDrive, if you really want to reinstall OneDrive, remote desktop connection if you need that back, and snipping tool if you need that back on 11 and 10. And then that's it. So covers that. Bloatware script requires a restart, so we will restart for that, just to make sure what we're seeing is accurate there. It'll say getting features ready and whatever, that's completely normal. Windows is actually just removing the bloat. This is completely normal. This is what happens when you add or remove features. You just have to wait it out. We've restarted. So this is more just for like checking if anything got left behind, or sort of what's deployed on your system. So this is stuff that I've installed. I've installed all of these, so that's really nice. And yeah, that'll include like Windows updates and stuff too. Just letting you guys know. So turn view install updates, like those will be included in here. Bloatware legacy features check. So that's here. And there's a bunch of extra ones that actually get removed that don't actually show in here as well. So if any of you guys are curious of what's going on, UWP bloat. So this is what we have here. I've left that because that is required for certain things. Same with media media encoders and stuff like that, all debloated and nice and clean. And there is a bunch of ones that Windows won't let you remove anymore. Obviously, we've reinstalled the store here, but there's a bunch of ones that Windows won't let you remove anymore, or it will completely brick Windows. I used to be able to remove CBS, and CBS is actually these two and that. You can't remove CBS anymore. You used to be able to remove it on 24H2. You cannot remove it anymore. Yeah, it just basically removes, and this is just sort of what's like left. Right. You can't really debloat anymore past this point without severely breaking things. So obviously I don't want to severely break things. CWP features check. So that's obviously from the menu here. Please keep VBS script. If you remove VBS script, you will break MSI install. Do not remove it. You could remove Notepad if you wanted to. Okay. And here's just like the list of them all. So basically I've just kept, Paint, and the network drivers that don't get touched. Same with the Wi-Fi drivers, but everything else gets removed, and all the language packs will get removed other than the ones that you currently have installed and you're using. Where Task Manager checks. So obviously if you are on a not a fresh install, you might have a bunch of stuff running in the background that doesn't necessarily need to be. So just come in here and check for that and see if you can turn it off in the app or uninstall it if you're not using it. Typically things that you have closed that are still running here in Task Manager, that's not a good idea. Look at either completely removing the software or getting it to not sort of run in the background. Power plan. This imports the ultimate power plan, but also does a whole lot more than that. I've just used the ultimate power plan as the name, but I'm just enforcing all the power options here. So you can have a bit of a read through here, and this actually works for laptops as well. Now, like I said, with the PO state one, if you're a laptop user that cares about power saving for the battery, I would not recommend this, but if it is a gaming laptop, I would. So we'll turn on the power plan. So it does a lot more than just ultimate performance. And then I've also, for OLED displays, I have set this by default so the display turns off in 10 minutes of inactivity so you don't ruin your monitor. Timer resolution is sort of a nice one. It makes driver latency a little lower, mouse a little bit more snappy on the desktop. Doesn't really help games anymore on modern hardware, something that I like very, very much. A snappier mouse feeling on the desktop. This will install a service that will constantly run in the background and force 0.5, and it is applied globally to the system ever since the great rule change. And there's the revert option too. UAC, I really don't like UAC, and there's a bug with some of the builds of Windows where if you don't run a game as administrator, you lose frames because of the Defender settings. So I like UAC off. This is a personal preference. If you go to run something as an administrator, you get this prompt that'll completely remove the prompt and make everything run as administrator, but you do need a restart for this to apply. Core isolation should always be off. Don't listen to what anyone says. Please always have this off. This is one of the biggest hogs in CPU performance in Windows. If I had to pick one setting in Windows to turn off, it would be memory integrity or isolation or VBS. Those are all the different names for it. Now, if you have installed Faceit at some point, even though this says it's off and you're not using Faceit anymore, it could still say that it's on. Check this here, virtualization based security. Make sure it is not. Now, if it is, don't worry, my Defender optimized setting will take care of things for you. What this is going to do is going to turn everything off in Defender other than real-time protection, just like WinSux. Everything will be turned off other than real-time protection. Now, if you play Valorant, you will need to come in here and turn Control Flow Guard back on, and I'll show you guys that in a minute. Let's run the Defender optimized script. It boots us into safe mode. It runs the script to turn all the settings off other than real-time protection, and we rebooted. So if we go to security here, I'll show you guys that everything is done. If I start with here, all these are off. Exploit protection settings are off. If you play Valorant, please turn this back on. Otherwise, you won't be able to play Valorant. These are all off. If you've uninstalled Edge, this is bugged. It'll always just look like it's on, but it's actually off because Edge is uninstalled. Smart app control is off. Firewall notification settings is off. Just all the annoying stuff with Defender. Defender's still on, still running. Don't worry. It'll still protect you. You're just not going to get any notifications other than the real-time protection one. If there's a shady file, it'll just pick it up and delete it straight away. Everything's off other than real-time protection. It's a revert option 2, or you can manually go in and turn those settings on. It's up to you. Now, auto run startup tasks and apps check. This will completely nuke all scheduled tasks that are third-party in Windows and any running apps that try to run on startups. So for some reason, MSI Afterburner, even though I've uninstalled it, has left this behind. So this is something third-party here. Intel's left this behind. Google has left this behind. And soft landing, I'm not sure what that's from. Have a bit of a look here. So that's from probably one of the Intel bloat, but it'll completely nuke any startup apps and any scheduled tasks. Okay. So if you currently have scheduled tasks and apps set up and you run this, you may need to reinstall them if you need some things to run and boot that won't let you change that in the actual app itself. For example, say you've got Stream Deck. There's no way to tell Stream Deck to boot on startup silently in the app, so you could just simply reinstall it. So that's just nuked all the startup apps, all the run once logon apps. So this is just the default Windows ones. Please leave those. This auto runs just lets you check. It's a fairly power user tool. Be very, very careful careful with what you touch. In here, the script actually makes a system restore point before you run it, just in case any of you out there decide to go and delete a driver like that one. If you delete this driver, you've completely nuked your Windows. So this is just a nice way to check if there's anything third party that you have on your system that, you know, you need to go look at removing. Cleanup will completely wipe the temp folders. There's 2 temp folders. That one's white, that one's white. And you can do a disk cleanup here. We'll just finish disk cleanup. So another thing I like to do, which I didn't include in this guide, but WinSux does it. You don't need the Windows old folder. You don't need this folder. People carry on like, oh, it's really important for Windows Defender. No, it's not. It's rubbish. And it looks like good old Intel decided to leave that behind. So remove that. But yeah, I like to remove those. And you can also remove that folder. Honestly, that just gets recreated if Perflux ever is going to get used. I would like to rename my C drive to Windows because why not? Makes it a little cleaner. Like everything named. I'm going to rename a USB stick to USB as well. Now we get to cover the hardware side of things. So if you are on higher scaling like me, you're going to have mouse acceleration. So with the way that Windows is, it's kind of limited with what you can do, unfortunately, with scaling. So I'll get this up here and I'll get the scaling options up here. I'll show you guys what's going on. So this script will allow you to run higher scaling with no desktop acceleration, depending on what you choose. So let's go to mouse polling rate test. So see how I've got acceleration here. So on the left and the right, they are not the same numbers. They actually need to be the same numbers for you to not have acceleration. So the things that are required in Windows to not have mouse acceleration on the desktop is 6 out of 11, enhanced point of precision off, and 100% scaling. Okay. And then the mouse acceleration is gone. Now that's very unpractical, as you can see here. I'm on a 27-inch 4K monitor and 100% scaling is not an option for me. So what I'm going to do is we're going to run higher scaling, no Excel. I will just change my scaling back so you guys can see what I'm doing. What this is doing is actually Mark C's mouse fix. This will turn enhanced. Okay. 100 won't. 100 will do what we've mentioned. 100% scaling, 6 out of 11 this off. But the other ones will turn enhanced point of precision on and then change the curve for enhanced point of precision so we don't get any acceleration on these different scaling levels. So please always leave 6 out of 11, always. And if you're using 2 to 9, make sure you leave this on. It needs to be on. But if you're using 1, this gets turned on. It just uses the default window. So you can only change the mouse curve this turned on. You cannot change the default curve in Windows with that turned on. I really like 200 scaling on 4K. So I'm going to press 5 and then enter. We actually need to restart for that to apply. All right, we're back in Windows and just letting you guys know, mouse movement recorder, when you run that script, actually gets installed. Kind of a handy tool. Actually gets installed now. The shortcut on the desktop in the start menu. So I will show you the mouse tab real quick. Where are we? Our enhanced point of precision is on. The script turned it on, and I'll open up this scaling. Now the way it works is it actually uses the legacy scaling. So this will be a lie. Ignore this. If you go in here, you see it set at 200. Okay. I'll open mouse movement recorder, and enhanced point of precision is on, and we have no desktop mouse acceleration, which is fantastic. So you have to leave enhanced point of precision on for the options that are other than number 1. This is really handy. Now, hear me out. Most games have raw input on nowadays, so this isn't an issue. But if you're like me, I don't like any acceleration even on the desktop, and I do play some legacy games that don't have raw input. So this is just a nice thing to do, especially if you want to run higher scaling. Now, let's cover some other things. Back to hardware. Background polling rate cap. As you saw there, Windows 11 added a new feature to cap your background polling rate to 125 Hz. For all applications, unless it's your game. So when you're in your game, it's supposed to be uncapped. But personally, I don't trust Microsoft, and I prefer the old way of doing things. How Windows 10 and before was. I like a complete uncapped polling rate, even on the desktop and just for everything. Now, there have been some games which bugged out. I do know a bunch of people that had issues, and when they ran this script to uncap it, it fixed the issue in the game. So because of that, I don't entirely trust Microsoft, and I'm going to uncap the polling rate completely. Now, letting you know, you guys are on a way worse CPU. It's probably not a good thing to do because you might get some stutters in games if you run a higher polling rate, but it's sort of a power option that I like to do. So to remove the background polling rate, we use off. So the default's 125 like you saw. So 1 and then enter. And we do need to restart for this as well. Now I've restarted. A mouse polling rate should be completely uncapped. I'm currently using my old Superlight just at the moment, but if I was using my OP18K, this would say 8000. So we've completely uncapped the polling rate, and the mouse already feels instantly nicer on the desktop, much more snappier. So I also need to cover mouse polling rate in general. So there's some interesting stuff here we probably need to talk about. So for mouse optimizations, I recommend turning off motion sync. Keep the dongle close to the mouse if it's a wireless mouse. Disable angle snapping. Set the lowest debounce time. Use the maximum polling rate. You ideally want to use the USB port closer to the CPU. Extreme polling rate may affect lower end of CPUs and certain game engine frame rates. If that happens, you can either lower your polling rate or look at reverting that if you're having issues. Set a comfortable DPI. Increased DPI reduces pixel skipping and latency. Suggested minimal DPI to reduce pixel skipping. At minimum 400 for 1080p. At minimum 800 for 1440p. And I mean 4K is more of a preference, but I would recommend 1600 for 4K. You don't want pixel skipping, and high DPI is lower latency to a point. Pick something that's comfortable. It's not a big deal. And we've already discussed this about mouse acceleration. And it's not necessarily newer games that have raw input. This is not an issue for, but it's just nice to not have mouse acceleration on the desktop. That sort of just goes over everything. Controller overclock. This is actually using the Battle Beaver's sign drivers. So we do not need to disable driver signature WHQL. So we can actually just use this by default. So I will plug in my PlayStation 4 controller and we can see what's going on. I plugged in my PlayStation 4 controller, and ideally, if you've done that, it might be a good idea to go into your sound devices and just get that to not trying to set itself as defaults. If you plug it into a different USB port, this is going to happen again. But if you're going to keep it in the same USB port every time, once you've done this, that won't happen anymore. Okay, so we'll do a controller polling rate test before we run the Sweetlow stuff to overclock the controller. The default polling rate on my controller would be about 250. So I need to press one and then enter, and then I'll do the left stick, 1 and enter, defaulting to left stick. So I spin the left stick. So that's 4 milliseconds. That's 250 hertz polling rate. That's no good. We obviously want to get that overclocked. Finish the test there. Let's get the controller overclocked. It also pre-installs the polling program there and your start menu too. So that's just fairly handy to use and check. Make sure it's all working. We'll run setup. We'll go all. We'll find our controller here. There's my controller there. We'll go filter on device 1000, install service, and restart. I would recommend unplugging and replugging the controller just to make sure that we're still in the green, and we are still in the green. So that is perfect. Now we can go do the controller test with the polling program. Press 1 and then enter, and then 1 and then enter, and then I'll use the left stick, and there we go. We are overclocked. We're at 1000 hertz polling rate. So all done. Next stage. So as long as we keep our controller plugged into that USB port, it'll always be overclocked. You can check it here if you need to. Now, monitor optimization. This is not so much for OLED displays, but if you have an IPS or TN panel, follow the top UFO with your eyes and look at setting the overdrive higher to get lower latency. On BenQs, it's called AMA Premium, I believe, but make sure you're not getting any blur. So obviously at the moment I'm using my pass-through capture card, so we don't have the high frame rate. But yeah, play around with your monitor settings, run the highest refresh rate, enable the overclock mode if you can, disable adaptive brightness and variable backlight, turn off variable refresh rate, adaptive sync and G-Sync if you really are after the lowest latency. If you're after a more smooth game, sure, leave them on, but if you're after the lowest latency, you want those off. Adjust color, brightness, and sharpening to your preference. These things can help a lot. Please, I've noticed a lot of guys that don't play with their monitor settings. Play with your monitor settings. There's amazing things you can do on there to see better in game. And yeah, if you're not on a OLED monitor, look at maxing the overdrive without causing overshoot or reducing motion clarity. So you can use the test UFO to do that by following it with your eyes and playing around with the monitor settings, crank up your overdrive. Network buffer bloat test. This is a fairly useful test. Make sure everything's all good with your internet and test your buffer bloat. Worth checking out. There's a bit of info here on different routers that are really good at making buffer bloat fairly nice. There's a PC build guide here that I have. If you guys are looking at upgrading, want to look at upgrading your hardware, now's a really bad time to be looking at building a PC or upgrading, but I'm very much bang for buck, price for performance. I have a video dedicated on this. So yeah, it can give you sort of like in the right direction if all you care about is your frame rate, nothing else, and saving money. But now's a really bad time to buy. As an example, this kit was $89 and is currently $455 USD. So definitely, even the boards have gone up in price. It's pretty sad. Same with GPUs. Even back then, the GPUs were that bad. I just had to put like text here to try to tell you guys, make sure you only get MSRP. And then put some recommended peripherals here, recommended ones just to get you guys out of trouble if you're interested. Let's get on to the advanced folder. Okay, guys, word of warning. The advanced folder is for complete advanced power users. A lot of the stuff in here can leave you completely vulnerable, break Windows, or potentially make your frame rates and latency worse. So please beware of that. Now let's get started with the Defender one. Defender will give you the option to entirely switch Defender off entirely. So the services and the drivers won't run at all in the background, and smart screen won't be there at all. So it will kind of completely nuke Defender, but in a safe way where it can be reverted. So what happens is it basically disables all the settings in here. Although the settings, I have gotten it so it will actually leave in registry control flow guard on. For those of you who play Valorant or Counter-Strike Face, it'll still work with this script. But basically, this turns off Defender without nuking Defender, if that makes sense. It turns off all the settings in here other than control flow guard, and it stops the services and the drivers from running and turns off smart screen. All right, so there is an apply button, so disable and enable default. So I'll disable it. There are a lot of you out there that run custom ISOs that completely strip Defender. This doesn't strip Defender. It just gets it to not run in the background, and it can be safely reverted if you decide to turn it back on. Okay, we're back in the desktop now. If you were to open up the security settings, it's completely turned off, and there's no smart screen. None of the drivers and the services are actually running. So it's a nice way to sort of like toggle it off. So I'll turn it back on and show you guys what that looks like. If you do toggle it back on, it will turn all the default Defender settings back on. All right, we're back in. If I go to security now, all the settings will actually be on the default settings. So let's go here, on here, all on. So obviously if you turn it back on, but you want to optimize the settings where everything is turned off other than real-time protection, you could quite simply go into the Windows folder and the Defender optimize. You go ahead and run that. If you wanted to keep Defender on, but just optimize the settings. All right, firewall. This is a way if you want to completely disable firewall. Now, I'm obviously not recommending any of these, but at least it gives you the option for full choice and control. So if we wanted to disable it, we can apply that and we'll have to restart. Restarted. Now firewall will be off completely, not running at all. Next one, Spectre Meltdown. This is a security patch for a bunch of older CPUs, and disabling it helped performance a little bit. I really don't recommend running this one. This will completely disable Spectre and Meltdown. Restart would be required for that as well. And there's always a revert option too. Data execution prevention. It's this one here. You can entirely turn it off. I don't know why you would want to turn this off, but you can. This is just giving power users options, especially for testing purposes. To get to that setting, the easiest way nowadays on Windows 11 is going system, about, advanced system settings, advanced settings. And now it will be turned off. So if you want this one to actually work, you'll have to disable secure boot. And obviously don't recommend that at all, but just letting you guys know. File download security warning. This one can get a little bit annoying. I'll show you guys what that looks like. So you want to download a file off the internet, go ahead and save it. Once it's downloaded, if you right click and go properties, by default, Windows will block the file if it wasn't made on your machine. So this will actually get rid of that entirely. Sometimes it won't let you run things, or give you a little prompt warning before you run it. So if we disable this, we're going to have to restart for this to apply. Now, when we download something, we won't get that little unblock. None of the files will be blocked by default. Let's go to Brave and re-download it just to test. If you right click, go properties. Now, when you download files, they're not blocked anymore. Agent features. We kind of covered this with disabling memory compression. Now, we can disable them all entirely. So what it will actually do is disable prefetching and sort of remembering an app to sort of reload for next time, so it's faster. So if you disable everything in here, when you loaded an app, it's going to load it like it's loading for the first time. I have seen on forums that there are certain games that has fixed frame rate issues. I very much doubt it on most modern games nowadays. And just letting you guys know, if you do want to disable everything in here, it's more than likely going to completely break indexing and search for you in Windows and history. So just letting you know. So to disable it, I've got the option here to turn it off. Press enter to continue. It'll take a little while to kick in. Now, if it's not working, you may need to restart. But usually you can just wait about 20 seconds or so and they'll all kick in, and then you can use the check option. I'll try the check option now, and there it is. It's all completely turned off. And if you want it back on, I've got the revert option to revert everything, but keep memory compression off, because memory compression should never be on. I'll open it again. We'll check it. We'll just wait a little bit, let Windows kick all those settings in. There it is there. They're all back to default other than memory compression is off. So worth testing. There might be some weird games that this might do something for, who knows. All right, resizable bar force. I like to use this script more for testing purposes. It's this for NVIDIA cards. So with NVIDIA cards and graphics drivers, there's kind of like a whitelist for resizable bar. So usually by default, it is on in BIOS. But usually driver side, NVIDIA decides whether they should enable it or disable it for certain games. We can override that for testing purposes here, which is really handy. So the default one is default driver whitelist per game default. This is the same NVIDIA control panel settings that also get imported from here and here. Just letting you guys know. So the default settings. So if I just do that, that's what we already have got with the Ultimate pack anyway. I'll open up Expector. You scroll down here, you see that resizable bar is by default disabled, but per game basis, it may be enabled or disabled. So let's, as an example, look up a game here. I'll look up Battlefield 5 and see how it is enabled by default. So we can sort of override that. We can force it on for everything. So if we press 2 and then enter, I've got it to open Inspector just so you can confirm. There it is, it's enabled there. Now, just letting you guys know, some games might try to override it. If that happens, you might need to set it in the game profile. As an example, I'll go to something like Black Ops 6. There's some games you might actually actually need to, not always, but some games you might actually need to override it if it's says disabled here. So that wasn't the case for Black Ops 6, but I will show you a game that tries to sort of like override it per driver, no matter what, even in the global settings. So if we go Battlefield 6, actually Battlefield 6 is a good example. You actually want this on for Battlefield 6, whereas the weird thing is the release driver had it enabled by default for the game, but now they're disabling it. So as an example here, in the global profile it's on, but for per game it's disabled. So in this case, you'd probably have to go in the game and check it and set it to enabled, but most of the time the global settings will work fine. My config on GitHub actually forces this on for everyone because it should be on and it helps a lot. I'm just letting you guys know sometimes the game profile might try to fully override it and you might have to go in here. But if it's kind of grayed out like Call of Duty was, as an example, Call of Duty Black Ops 6, it's grayed out but it says enabled, you don't have to worry about it. It's only if it's like actually in the black text and it says disabled, then you have to force override for the game. Usually you don't have to do that. And then we can actually force it off. So, you know, because we can't necessarily trust NVIDIA's whitelist, right? And the way it works, we can actually completely force it off. So by setting it to disable. So this is quite nice for testing purposes. As an example, if we go to Battlefield, like the game that's been quite troublesome, Battlefield 6 with this setting, it's obviously enabled from when we changed it last time, but I just want to show you guys. See how it says disabled here. Actually, I want to show you something where you can force disable it. So this is probably isn't the game that I want to show you that with. I will show you maybe Call of Duty Black Ops 6. So see how it says disabled here? I've noticed sometimes some games might not fully disable it. So if that happens, you can always just set it to 0 instead of doing it in the global profile. That way it actually shows. So this is just some tools for help testing purposes. So generally speaking, when I'm doing a game guide, I will actually force it off in BIOS and force it off in Inspector as well for the global profile and the game profile, just to make sure when I'm testing on, off, and default, so I can figure out what the whitelist is for NVIDIA. So number 4 will just take you straight to BIOS if you want to toggle off resizable bar on and off. Usually you don't need to force it on or off in BIOS at all. You can just do it driver side for NVIDIA, but just because I'm super anal and when I do testing, I want to make sure that rebar is definitely off. So I do it in BIOS and software. Most of you guys will just be fine doing it in software for testing. So I'm going to put it obviously back to the whitelist by default because forcing resizable bar on for globally for everything is a very bad idea. There are a bunch of games that will run a lot worse with forcing resizable bar on. That's why NVIDIA have a whitelist. But the reason why I have this script is there's a bunch of times that NVIDIA's whitelist actually get it wrong. As an example, Battlefield 6. On the game ready driver for Battlefield 6, it was on. And then now all the newer drivers, it is disabled and you lose frames. So the driver developers don't always get it right. And that's why I make scripts like this. All right, the next script, SMT hyperthreading. So this is mainly for testing purposes. So you didn't want to use something like Process Lasso or manually go into Task Manager every time and set affinities. This script can kind of automate it for you temporarily. So that's how we would disable SMT or hyperthreading, so we don't run the game on any of the threads and only the pure cores. This is kind of nice to do for some games, not many games. Most games you want threads on, but there are some games that might run a little bit better without threads. I know that Rust is one of them. Escape from Tarkov is another one of them. There are some weird like legacy games like that don't run so well on the threads. So this sort of automates that, right? So this script gives you two options, right? We have off already starting and then on startup. So off already running and off on startup. So as you can see here, Black Mesa, we're just using that for testing purposes. Black Mesa has all the threads on. It's called BMS exe. If I go off already running and then enter, and then it will show me IDs that are higher than 400 megabytes. So BMS is the ID that we want to change. So 2272 and then press enter. And then what it will say is it's changed it. So it's to say this is core 1, thread 1, core 2, thread 2, core 3, thread 3. So we can actually confirm that in Task Manager and it has done it for us. And this is only temporarily. When we close the game, it's not going to keep doing this. It's only sort of temporary, if that makes sense. If we close the game and open it again, the threads would still be on unless we ran this script. So this is kind of really nice for testing purposes. I found there's another way to do it. You can do it on startup. So it's not going to work with a web link. This is a web link. So if the game would let you run without Steam, as an example, so, you know, if a game doesn't have a game launcher, it goes through a game launcher, you could just get the exe file and run that, or even create a shortcut to that and then run that. You know, you could select it'll work if you select the shortcut with number 2. But the problem with it's actually working this time. Oh, it's probably because I had to have Steam open. Okay, before I didn't have Steam open. I have Steam closed. It actually won't let me do it that way. Yeah, see. Okay, so this will actually work. I can show you guys. So I could do it for the exe in here, as long as we have Steam open, and we could do it for the shortcut exe. So I'll do it for the shortcut exe. I'll show you multiple ways you can do this, guys. I'll keep Steam open. So off on startup. So we could either select the pure exe file, which is in Steam, Steam Apps, Common, Black Mesa, BMS. Obviously that's too much effort. I've created a shortcut on the desktop, BMS exe. I click open and I forgot to open Steam. So I better make sure I've opened Steam. Well, that's right. This script, when you open it, kills all modern game launchers. So because you can actually get it to do it by opening Steam as well. So off startup, so it's going to kill Steam there. I'll just reopen Steam just to show you that it works with an exe file, because you know not everyone's using game launchers. And I'll show you why it kills all the game launchers in a second, because if we can't do it this way or the game has strict anti-cheat, we can actually set it to the game launcher instead. So let's do it off the exe file or the exe file shortcut. We'll go open, the getting value. There it is there. Okay, and we can confirm that in Task Manager. Obviously, you can just do this in Task Manager for some games. This is quite nice for automation. And for games that have strict anti-cheat, there is another workaround. So let's just pretend that Black Mesa has a strict anti-cheat. What we can actually do is we can go here and the script will actually, when you run number 2, will actually kill all game launchers by design. As an example, let's pretend this is like a game with a strict anti-cheat and it won't let you change the affinities for the exe file because it's anti-cheat protected. We can do off startup as well for an actual game launcher. So we could find the original Steam exe file, or we could use the Steam shortcut. I'm just going to use the Steam shortcut. So we're actually going to disable SMT or hyperthreading. So disable the threads for Steam itself. So if I go find Steam, we'll see that it is, the threads are off, thread 1, thread 2, thread 3. You guys get the point. Now when you actually launch a game through Steam, it's going to kind of copy what the Steam settings are using. So we're not entirely setting it for the game. We're actually just setting it for Steam, but the game sees Steam as that. So it's going to kind of like copy what it's doing. So as we see here, there it is there. The threads are off. So that's a nice way to work around some games with a strict anti-cheat that won't let you in particular like manually dial this in here. So yeah. So the other scripts that I have here, like core 1 thread 1, is pretty much very similar to the way that one works. So for an example, like Counter-Strike 2 at the moment actually performs a lot better without core 1 and thread 1. So what that looks like is like core 1 thread 1 for some reason. There are some weird games that don't have really bad scheduling, because Windows tend to pin a lot of stuff on core 1 and thread 1, and for some reason there are some iffy games that don't really utilize all the cores properly, and turning this off of the game helps performance. Don't ask me why. You can test that with Counter-Strike 2. I've confirmed it on many systems. So what I'll do is I will open up Black Mesa and we'll do the already running one. So already running is BMS. So I type in 1988 and press enter, and then core 1 thread 1 is off, and we don't have to confirm that, but I just wanted to show you guys how this stuff works. It's done there. Okay, what if we want to do it for the exe file? Start up, and I will reopen Steam before we do it, because realistically you're better off just doing it for the game launcher itself. It doesn't always work, so you guys have options. You guys might be playing a really old game that just has an exe, and you can go directly to the exe. So we'll do it with the BMS exe, not the web shortcut. Like I said before, this is the web shortcut. We're doing it for the direct exe file. Getting value of it a little bit. Okay, and that worked. As you can see, core 1 and thread 1 is off. Great for testing purposes. Now let's do it with Steam. So core 1 thread 1 off startup. It's going to nuke any game launchers that are running on startup that are currently running. It will nuke them just so this works properly. We select Steam, either the exe file or the shortcut. Open. It'll turn off core 1 thread 1 for Steam itself. Here it is there. Core 1 thread 1 is off for Steam. Core 1 thread 1 is off for Steam. And now when we launch a game through Steam, it'll actually disable core 1 and thread 1 for any game that we launch through Steam. There it is there. And to sort of reset that, all we would have to do is simply exit Steam, and now it will be back at a default state. Very similar thing for priority as well. If you want to muck around with priority doesn't really help anymore. It used to help like a decade ago on certain games. Now it's not going to help you at all. So let's open Black Mesa. It's normally through Steam, through the web launcher. Okay, it's open now. What is the default priority for Black Mesa? It is normal. So if we want to change it to something different, we've got real time, high, above normal, normal, below normal, idle. I believe some of these don't work on Windows 11, but do work on 10. So usually people go high. So let's say we want to test high, press 2, and then BMS is the exe name. So 2832 is the ID currently since the game was launched. And it says high. If I come check in Task Manager, it is high. That's a great way to test. And like I said before, this is temporary, so it's not going to do it like permanently. Okay, priority again here. So priority on startup. We'll do on startup. Let's test the exe file itself. And I have to open Steam for this, but like I said, if you guys don't have a game through Steam and it's just an exe file game, you can do it that way. So we'll go open BMS, Black Mesa. We'll pretend this game is just not through Steam, but just an exe file. It is running in the background. Change it to high. Oh, we didn't need to open the game there. We just needed to have Steam open. Okay, so let's select the exe file, either a shortcut or the actual directory itself. Okay, it says BMS is high. So let's just confirm that in Task Manager. It is high. Great. Okay, and then say we wanted to do it through the game launcher. Don't necessarily have to close Steam because number 2 is going to nuke any game launchers. straight away before you can run this. So we want to do high. So let's select Steam. So, you know, a game that has a strict anti-cheat, you want to do high priority. The game doesn't let you change that. This is a workaround. It says Steam is in high. Let's confirm that with Task Manager. Steam is in high. Great. We launched the game through Steam, and now it should set any game we launch through Steam at high priority. Mesa has launched. Priority is normal. Interesting. It looks like only the Affinity one works through Steam, although I have seen this work before. So, and I can confirm that. So it could depend on the game. I just chose Black Mesa today because it was easy. Oh yeah. There's a nice little like, it's more if you didn't want to use Process Lasso. Like I don't like Process Lasso. I don't want that stored on my machine because Process Lasso can automate this stuff and do it permanently on boot. I don't want any of that running just for testing purposes. I just like more of a temporary thing. That's why I made these scripts. It kind of helps. It saves a little bit of time. So once you have a lot more hands on with them, it's a lot easier. All right, MPO. So MPO is something that should always just be left on. But if you're going to play every game in Legacy Flip, there's just no point having it on if you're always going to play full screen and not play games in borderless windowed mode. Or if you're cloning with a capture card, sometimes that can cause issues. Or actually people with AMD graphics cards have issues with certain games with MPO. So what it's essentially going to do is it's going to disable MPO, and as well as disabling MPO, it's going to disable optimizations for windowed games because there's no point having having this on if you're going to have MPO off. And then if you enable it, it will enable both. So default is MPO enabled and borderless windowed optimizations for windowed mode games, and off is MPO off and borderless optimizations for windowed mode games off. That's what that is. Special K does a really nice write-up on swap chain right here. You can read it if you want. I do want to eventually do a dedicated video on the different flip models and stuff like that. If I got a presentation model here, this kind of explains things really well. So basically the flip models you want to be in is hardware composed independent flip. That is definitely using MPO. Hardware independent flip, that doesn't always use MPO. And then hardware legacy flip, which is the old style, which completely bypasses the compositor. It doesn't work on DirectX 12 though. And a lot of sort of like the Counter-Strike aimers or the mouse aimers love to use this, but obviously it doesn't work in DirectX 12. You definitely don't want to be using a composed flip, whether it be GPU or CPU composed flip. You can check this with my MSI Afterburner overlay. You want to make sure you're in at least one of these three. So the MPO script will basically disable MPO entirely and borderless optimization for full screen because and it's for testing purposes. Most of you guys shouldn't touch this. But if you wanted to test it, you can go off or on. Okay. And then there's hardware legacy flip. So 9 times out of 10, you guys are going to be in hardware composed flipped or hardware independent flip, but you can force hardware legacy flipped in any game that isn't DirectX 12. So whether it be Vulkan, DirectX 11, DirectX 10, DirectX 9, DirectX 8, or OpenGL. If you wanted to completely bypass the compositor, some people swear that it's a better mouse feeling. Honestly, they patched full screen optimizations. So to the point where now it doesn't, the latency doesn't matter. But on the older Windows builds, full screen optimizations added about 1 millisecond extra latency. So that's why you probably still see people recommending disable full screen optimizations, but I don't recommend it anymore. After Windows 10 1803 build, they patched full screen optimization latency. The latency is just as good and it's easier to alt tab. So the default is full screen optimizations are independent flipped, right? FSO default. And then if you wanted to force full screen exclusive, we can do that here. So let's use a game that isn't DirectX 12 because this won't work on DirectX 12 just to show you guys. I will use my MSI Afterburner overlay so we can see what flip model we're in. So we're in GPU copy, which is not good at all. That is not good for frame rate or latency. If it's going to let me, and let's see what flip model we're in. We're in independent flip. So this is good. This is a good flip model we actually want to be in. For some reason, it looks like the menu kind of like bugs. Yeah, okay. We're in independent flip. That's what we want to be in. So I wanted to show you this script to force legacy flip. So this is what we're currently in is full screen optimizations. So that's good. But if you wanted to force a legacy flip, you could simply press 2 and then press enter. And then it'll say here, may also be required. You have to go to the GameX, see properties, compatibility, disable full screen optimizations. Some games you have to do this, some games you don't. On Windows 11, you can't just do it in the game properties. You also have to apply some registry keys as well. This applies the registry keys. So let's open up Black Mesa and see if we need to do it for the exe file as well. There's some you do, some you don't. It looks like we don't for this. Yeah, for this game, we don't particularly have to. We are in hardware legacy flip, so we've completely bypassing the compositor. So in theory, this should be the snappiest mouse input by completely bypassing the compositor. But alt tabbing is going to be really horrible, like absolutely horrible. So I want to show you guys, you don't see legacy flip. We may have to go to the exe file and actually go here, and we may have to do this, disable full screen optimizations, as well as the reg keys that this applies. Sometimes you have to do both and sometimes you don't. So I'll show you as an example for a file that you have to do both with. I'll boot up Valley benchmark here. This is a really, really old benchmark, but a nice one. We'll just crank the settings here. Okay. And I'll go with system. So we've already applied the registry keys with that script to force legacy flip, FSE. As you can see here, in the sound of, but it's not working for this particular title. And the exe file name is valley.exe. So I'm going to Alt F4. So for this game or this benchmark in particular, I actually need to find valley.exe, and we have to actually also do it in the compatibility tab. So disable full screen optimizations, reopen the Valley launcher, and then run, and then it should put us in legacy flip. So say you want to revert that, ideally probably do it to both. So I would go find the Valley exe as an example. I'll turn that off to revert it. I'll also revert this one too. So this one doesn't require restart this script, right? And then I will go to advanced, and then we will revert the registry keys. So we're going to be back in hardware independent flip or full screen optimizations. So I will open up Black Mesa, and it shouldn't be on legacy flip anymore. We are in independent flip. Perfect. Hopefully that sort of makes sense. I might do a dedicated video on flip models one day. Now we can actually force hardware composed independent flip, which I thought was pretty cool. I recently discovered this one. And it seems hardware composed independent flip actually forces MPO, I believe. If I am wrong, please type in the comments below. So I believe it'll force this one, which actually will definitely force MPO. So, you know, worth playing around with if you maybe want to smooth the game. So to do this, you do need a restart for this one. So the default is hardware independent flip most of the time. Some games will do hardware composed, but you can actually force hardware composed on all games with this method. So go 1 and then enter, and we do need a restart for this one. So I'm going to restart. Right, we've restarted. We'll open up my MSI Afterburner overlay. If you guys don't want to use the MSI Afterburner overlay and you've got another monitor, you can actually use a tool called PresentMon, and I can't really show you because of my pass-through capture card. This is an Intel tool that's basically built into every single benchmarking software, and it's made by Intel, and it's a simple little like exe file. They do have their own program as well, but I don't recommend using that because half the time it breaks the flip model. And as you can see here at the moment, like DWM is legacy flip. But if you were to open a game right now, I guess I'll just open a game just to show you guys. You can see the flip model. But I'm gonna have to unfortunately open the game or open something in windowed mode. So you kind of need a monitor on like your other display. So we're in composed GPU copy, which is really bad. MSI Afterburner showing that too. This is really, really bad. So this tool is cool, but you need a second monitor, and you need this on your second monitor. So that's why I made the MSI Afterburner one to show like what flip model you're in. Anyway, let's see if hardware composed flipped worked. Let's go to, doesn't really matter what, it just says system here, run. So in theory, this should force hardware composed flipped instead of independent flipped. So hardware composed flip, that's forced it, and that works. So correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I believe this is forcing MPO on at all times. I could be wrong there. It's just kind of cool if you want to play around with flip model. Technically speaking, this should be the most smoothest experience for a game. And I'll show you that it will work with Black Mesa as well. We're in the game. We'll just wait for the flip model to kick in. And yeah, hardware composed flip, independent flip. And this one will actually work on DirectX 12 as well. It'll sort of like work on everything, unless a game developer specifically wants to override this, which should be a thing, but 9 times out of 10, you should be able to like muck around with this one. One day I'll do a video on the different flip models, but for now, I just thought that would be cool to just show you guys if you wanted to play around with that. I'm obviously going to revert back to the default state here. So I'll go back to the default state and I will restart. All right, next one, ULPS, ultra low power savings for AMD. If you've got a 7000 series and a 9000 series card, please do not use this at all. It will cause massive hitches. So to check that, go to system, display. This is for AMD users only. Go to graphics. If you have this setting, do not use this at all. It will cause massive hitches, right? If you've got an older card and you don't have this feature, I definitely do recommend probably turning it off. To check that, you can actually do, if you have MSI Afterburner installed, you can see it there, ULPS. To turn it off is number 2 and then enter. Now ignore the fact that I've got 2 registry entries for GPUs. That's simply for the fact that I did this video and have been hot swapping graphics cards. If I go to MSI Afterburner now, it is on, disable ULPS is on. This won't be grayed out if you have your AMD card plugged in, but just for the purposes of this video, I really don't want to hot swap cards anymore. I'm already over it. But please do not use this one if you have a 7000 series or 9000 series AMD graphics card, because you have HAGs, and HAGs is much better than this, and HAGs with this causes massive hitches and frame rate drops. So I'm going to put it back to default here. I accidentally didn't put it back to default. Let's see. You want default number 1 and then enter. There we go. Now it is on, which is the default. Disable ULPS is not on. That's good. So that is the default. I recommend most of you just leaving it like that. Now, driver WHQL secure bit bypass. This is a fairly dangerous one. It kind of loosens the WHQL. So if you wanted to sort of run an unsigned driver on your machine, you potentially could. So as an example, let's grab HID USBF. So these are the unsigned ones. Battle Beaver have newer signed ones, which is what my script goes ahead and downloads, right? But the HID USBF ones, these ones are actually not signed. So if you have secure boot on, you can't actually run, so where's secure boot here? I'll keep it set on. If you have secure boot on, you can't run drivers that aren't signed. So this is technically like a bypass for that. If you want to run a driver that's unsigned on your Windows with secure boot on, it's a bypass. So I'll download HID USBF as an example and show you guys and plug in my controller and show you that it just doesn't work because these drivers are unsigned. So where are we? Let's clean this up a little bit, and I need to just go here and here. Okay, it looks like maybe they are using the new Battle Beaver ones. Okay, so there's kind of like no point for this script anymore. There looks like HID USBF are using the Battle Beaver ones now, which is really nice. Before they sort of weren't and they hadn't updated it. So yeah, these are the signed ones, which is great. As an example, if you did use the old HID USBF and you have secure boot on, this is a way you can sort of work around and you want to run an unsigned driver. I really don't recommend this one now that I have the signed drivers. But yeah, off is the default and on will allow you to run an unsigned driver with secure boot on. So kind of a nice thing to do as a power user. Now, keyboard shortcuts. This one, if you've got a keyboard that's not customizable, so default's going to be the default setting, keyboard shortcuts off. What it's going to do is it hasn't run it yet, so you have to press enter for it to work. It'll disable all keyboard shortcuts to prevent tabbing out of a game. So every single Windows shortcut that's built in Windows won't work at all. And then the escape is actually rebound to equals simply for the fact that there are some shortcuts that you can easily press. This script is going to be completely useless to 99.9% of people, but I'm sure there'll be someone out there that will appreciate this script. They constantly get tabbed out of games for spamming Windows shortcuts that alt tabs them out. This will kind of solve that. More of a niche one. And I just saw a problem, so I made a solution basically. Okay, so services I don't run at all, and it's actually going to create a restore point for you completely. For the people that like bare minimum things running in Windows, you can use this. It will break 8 out of 10 features in Windows from working entirely. It's not going to boost your performance. It's not going to lower your latency because all these services sit dormant and they're not pinging CPU and GPU usage anyway. So I really don't recommend using this one. And this script is not compatible with Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. So if you've run this on Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, go run that restore point that was created. All right. So if I go to recovery, open system restore, as you can see, it has created a before services restore point. So if any of you idiots try to use this on Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and then when you use the default option, it doesn't enable the default Wi-Fi and Bluetooth drivers services, there is a before services restore point you need to run. But please, I don't want to get any more messages about this script. This is an advanced folder for advanced power users and purely for testing purposes. If you don't mind breaking 8 out of 10 features in Windows and all you do is play games and web browse and you don't care about leaving yourself completely vulnerable, sure, it's kind of nice. It's just more to show that you can do it, because I see a bunch of customizers that are like, look, it's lower services. Oh my God. You can do this on a vanilla Windows. There's nothing special about customizers, and half the time they completely break features and completely strip out features. I've made it in a way where if you've got a desktop machine and no Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, you can actually quite safely turn them off and turn them back on purely for testing purposes, which is nice. So it boots us into safe mode, and it's basically only going to use run trusted and admin to disable a bunch of services. This will not touch the Defender services. So if you have Defender on, it will not touch that at all. Okay, it's only going to touch all the other ones. So at the moment, I've run the Defender script off, so we won't see any of that stuff running. Just to show you how bare, low, and minimum we can get the tasks running in Windows with still being able to just play games and just browse the web. But like I said, 8 out of 10 features in Windows is going to be completely broke. So what do we got here? So we've got background processes. So Microsoft System Center always sort of runs on boot. As we can see here, we've got things pretty minimal. So this is the best I could do for compatibility for all systems. If you have a bit of a read in that script with notes, there were extra things that you could turn off for services that were in 10 that you can't no longer do on 11. And I've had to constantly patch this one because Windows make more and more dependency for services nowadays. This is sort of like the bare minimum you can get by open services. MSSC, to show you guys, a whole bunch gets disabled. So if you're unhappy with that, you have the restore point option, or if you're on a desktop machine, the revert option, and you're not using Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, the revert option will work fine. Okay, so what else? The last one, and be very, very careful with this one. This script will even more break your Windows because the services is going to break a bunch of features if you try to go into them, right? I'll just try to show you with an example. See, that just crashed right there. Try to run the dependencies for the services for Windows backup and it didn't work. But this script will will actually disable start, search, shell, and MobiSync. So say if you're super insane and you wanted to get these tasks down even lower and you find using something like OpenShell or a different sort of UI overlay, I mean, you can, but this is purely for testing purposes. So I'll go ahead and run that. And what that will do is that will just nuke start, search, and shell and move the files in a different location to back them up. But basically being able to use anything other than Explorer is not going to be an option anymore. There it is there. There's no start, there's no shell, there's no MobiSync, so MobiSync won't run in the background. And obviously your start menu is not going to work. Your flyouts, well, okay, it looks like the flyouts are kind of working, but right clicking the taskbar tray won't work. Probably pinning won't work. You really only have access to File Explorer by pressing Windows key E. So yeah, and if you wanted to revert that, obviously the revert option works fine. Now, this is just purely for testing purposes to show that it can be possible. And if you actually use Windows 10, I believe the processors will be down to 30 instead of 37, which is on Windows 11. Because there's a bunch of extra services in Windows 11 compared to 10. So we got search shell back. I'll just run that one more time just to show you guys how minimum we can get it, and I'll show you the kind of other page in Task Manager, the details page. And like, let's say you didn't want to run timer resolution, like that wouldn't be there either if you didn't want to. You can get things down pretty low. It's not going to help performance or latency at all. Let's see how minimum we've got things, and say, you know, you didn't care about running the control panel in the background. It's about as low as you can get it on Windows 10 if you just, on Windows 11 if you just wanted to play games and browse the web. You're completely wasting your time. It's not going to change your frame rate. It's not going to change your latency. These services just sit dormant anyway. So the revert options are there and available to you if you're interested. So that's everything, guys. Thanks for sticking me with the video. A full comprehensive guide on being able to do absolutely everything in Windows and have full control, and you decide how you want things set up. I've made it very, very easy for you. This took a lot of time and effort, so I'd appreciate your support, guys, for giving me a subscribe here. I usually never ask for subscriptions, but you guys give me a like and subscribe on the video. I will always be patching and keeping this updated, and I'm very, very happy with the updates and changes I've made compared to what it looked like about a year ago. So take it easy, guys. Hope you found some of this helpful. I'll see you guys in the next one. Optimizing game settings and config files can only do so much. Please consider going through this GitHub guide with video to cover the basic Windows and BIOS optimizations. If hardware is limiting your performance, please check out my build guide for upgrade and PC build suggestions. Make sure to update to the latest graphics drivers, or at least the recommended version from the game developer or game mentioned in driver patch notes from the driver developer. The NVIDIA app with certain settings turned on will cause frame rate loss. Turn off optimized games and creative applications. Turn off automatically optimized newly added games and apps. Avoid using game filters and statistics. As far as AMD drivers, I've not seen any tests, so just be cautious. Game launchers should have logging, game overlay, hardware acceleration, and cloud sync turned off. Please do this for web browsers, Spotify, Discord, or anything else open while you play. Any monitoring or RGB program causes frame rate loss even closed. This includes Asus Armoury Crate, MSI, Gigabyte, ASRock driver utilities, NZXT Cam, Corsair IQ, Lee L Connect, and etc. Uninstall if possible. Services and drivers for these apps still run even if the apps are closed. GPU-Z, hardware info, MSI Afterburner, and etc. can cause frame rate problems when logging GPU power. Close these out when gaming, or turn off GPU power logging in the settings. If you like your Windows, game, BIOS, hardware, or stream setup fresh, tuned, and optimized, support me and book my PC service. All links can be found in the description below. Just check Linktree.